Chapter 1. In the music cafe of X City, the sound of the piano flowed like water. Yun Shang looked at the check in front of her. Opposite her sat a man and a woman. The man was handsome and the woman was young and fashionable. In contrast, Yun Shang, who exuded the smell of herbs, was very abrupt. Yun Shang, let's break up. Here is a check of 100,000 yuan to repay the tuition you paid for me in the past few years. The man was well-dressed and had an elegant scholar's temperament. He was Lu Minglang, a medical doctor from M country, who was hired by the First People's Hospital of X City with a high salary. Looking at Lu Minglang's style, no one would have guessed that a few years ago, he was just a poor student who had just graduated from a medical university. He had neither a high nor a low job. It was only with the support of his girlfriend, Yun Shang, that he could study abroad. After several years of separation, he thought that his university romance would last forever. In exchange, he only received a check of 100,000 yuan. A sarcastic smile appeared on Yun Shang's delicate face. As if stung by Yun Shang's smile, Lu Minglang did not wait for her to refuse and said first, "It's not that I abandoned you. It's that you are too disappointing. Look at you now. In any case, you are a top student from a famous clinical university, but you don't want to make progress and inherit some ancestral Chinese medicine clinic. Our classmates in university are doing better than you now. You don't know how to put on makeup and look sloppy." There was a slap. Yun Shang picked up the check and threw it in Lu Minglang's face. "If you want to break up, don't beat around the bush, and don't discredit Chinese medicine. I have no future. I can't compare with Qian Weiwei, the daughter of the director of the sanitary bureau sitting next to you. She can help you buy a house and a car, and find a high-paying job. Lu Minglang, you are a high-level gigolo." She had already learned from others that Lu Minglang had a new lover. Yun Shang's voice was strong and her words were clear. Everyone in the music cafe could hear her clearly. This kind of melodramatic scene that only appeared in TV series was rare. People in the cafe looked over curiously and pointed at Lu Minglang and the young woman beside him. Lu Minglang's expression was ugly. He hurriedly pulled his new girlfriend who was about to flare up and left. He had only taken a few steps when Lu Minglang suddenly fell to the ground. He held his abdomen in pain and cried out, "It's acute appendicitis. Weiwei, call 120. Qian Weiwei was so scared that her face turned pale. She had never seen such a situation. She couldn't even use her phone properly. The manager of the cafe was quick-witted. After checking, he called the emergency number. It was the rush hour and it would take at least 20 minutes for the ambulance to reach the music cafe. But Lu Minglang was already rolling on the ground in pain. Yun Shang looked on coldly from the side. "Is there a doctor here who can help with the emergency treatment?" After waiting for 5 minutes, Lu Minglang was in so much pain that he almost fainted. The foreman had no choice but to ask in the coffee shop. "She is a doctor. She and Minglang used to be classmates. I heard that her surgical skills are the best in the university." Qian Weiwei, the daughter of the government official, finally came back to her senses and pointed at Yun Shang. Lu Minglang also remembered this. He was sweating profusely and struggled to crawl to Yun Shang's feet. "Yun Shang, you have a way to relieve my pain. For the sake of our past, for the sake of money, I can let you hold on until the ambulance arrives. But my medical fees are not low. One price 500,000. It's up to you whether you want to treat me or not." Yun Shang looked at the man who was crawling on the ground like a dog. This was the man she used to love so much. "Are you crazy? 500,000? Why don't you go rob a bank?" Qian Weiwei cursed. "Weiwei, give it to her. If this goes on, my intestines will perforate." Lu Minglang couldn't hold on any longer. He was a Western doctor and knew very well that if he didn't handle this situation well, the consequences would be very serious. Yun Shang's words were always accurate. If she said she could do it, she would definitely do it. Qian Weiwei hesitated for a moment, wrote a check and handed it to Yun Shang. Yun Shang squatted down and took out a needle bag from her jacket pocket. The needles were long and thin, millimeter thick, and were golden. Only a master of acupuncture could use these golden needles. She placed her palm on the acupoints on Lu Minglang's feet. Her movements were smooth and she had the style of a master. Lu Minglang was in so much pain that he started to lose consciousness. He could only see the side of his ex-girlfriend's fair face. Yun Shang's palm was placed on his body and he felt a cold and warm breath rush into his body. His whole body instantly felt much better. After Yun Shang withdrew her hand, she suddenly pulled down Lu Minglang's pants. "What are you doing?" Qian Weiwei was displeased. "Acupuncture," Yun Shang said casually. She inserted a needle into Lu Minglang's first and second lumbar vertebrae. It was just one needle. "It doesn't hurt anymore?" Lu Minglang sat up. His whole body was drenched in sweat. He looked around in surprise. "The surgery still needs to be done. It's just temporary pain relief." Yun Shang put away the check and the golden needles. Her expression was calm. One needle could make a patient with acute appendicitis recover to his original state? 500,000 yuan in medical expenses. Among the onlookers, someone suddenly shouted, "You are the famous Jade Hand Divine Needle in X City, Needle Yen." In the past few years, the most famous person in the Chinese medical field was Needle Yen. It was rumored that her gender was unpredictable. She was elusive, and when she treated patients, she could control their life and death with just one needle. She did not act easily. Every time she acted, the medical expenses would be 500,000 yuan. Yun Shang did not answer. She left the music cafe, leaving Lu Minglang and Qian Weiwei dumbfounded. Lu Minglang. A needle worth 500,000 yuan is the breakup fee. At Yun Shang's level of acupuncture, to relieve the pain of acute appendicitis, she only needed to use her internal qi to open the acupoints. There was no need to use the open needle. Her last needle was a needle that hurt the kidney. Even if Lu Minglang paid 500,000 yuan, it could not change the fact that he could not be a man in the future. Walking out of the cafe, Yun Shang anonymously sent the check to the discipline inspection office. She believed that the headlines of tomorrow's newspaper would be very interesting. People who offended Yun Shang, regardless of whether they were men or women, would not have a good ending. Coincidentally, a taxi stopped. A man wearing a cap and a black jacket got out of the car. He got out of the car in a hurry and bumped into Yun Shang. The man ran away without apologizing. Yun Shang got into the taxi. She could not help but cry. She did not notice that the man left a black plastic bag when he got out of the car. After nearly 10 years of love and waiting, this was the result she had been waiting for. She unconsciously rubbed the jade bracelet on her arm. She said to herself, "Grandpa, is it like what you said? Our Yen family went against the heavens and saved too many people. We are destined to die young or die alone." Yun Shang, who was immersed in her memories, did not notice that the taxi's radio was broadcasting a piece of news. Emergency notice: there have been many vicious explosions in X City recently. Suspected terrorists have placed explosive devices on public transportation and crowded places. If citizens find suspicious people or unknown black plastic bags, please call the police. About 5 minutes later, a taxi driving on the road exploded with a boom. Black smoke billowed. A female passenger and the taxi driver were determined to be dead on the spot. Chapter 2. At the moment when the taxi exploded, Yun Shang didn't lose consciousness. She only felt that her body was torn apart in an instant, and her consciousness flew out like a leaf. Then she fell heavily on the ground. Her body felt like it had been crushed, and it was extremely painful. She heard unbridled laughter. "Smash this vile spawn to death." Yun Song Hai, so what if you are a rare genius magician? You can't save your wife and child. Dozens of masked men in black laughed wantonly. The moment her body fell to the ground, her body was in great pain. Yun Shang found that she had turned into a baby, and a baby who had been thrown to death. This was the time travel that was often mentioned in novels. Not long after the baby was born, it was thrown to the ground and immediately stopped breathing. Yun Shang's soul took this opportunity to enter the baby's body. The baby's body was very weak. If it wasn't treated, even if it survived, it would only be a cripple. Yun Shang noticed that the baby was wearing a bracelet that was exactly the same as the one she had in modern times. It was worn together with the family heirloom jade bracelet. Fortunately, there was the jade bracelet. Yun Shang's consciousness turned, and the bracelet emitted a weak light, which went into the baby's body. The remaining trace of divine power in the bracelet quickly repaired the baby's heart meridians. The dozens of masked men in black didn't notice the changes in the baby's body. "Let go of my child." An angry man descended from the sky, waving a strange bone staff in his hand. Yun Sheng had never seen such a bone staff. On the scepter, 5 pieces of jade the size of cat's eyes lit up at the same time. In an instant, the gloomy sky turned fiery red. It was like a huge furnace that was smelting steel. Countless flames were like boiling molten iron. The man waved the bone staff and there was fire everywhere. Countless fireballs fell like a rainstorm. Heaven and earth turned into a sea of hell, and the fire was raging. The rolling fireballs fell on the bodies of the perpetrators, and dozens of people turned into burning corpses at the same time. The fire was incomparably powerful. The masked men in black didn't even have time to cry out and beg for mercy before they turned into a pile of scorched earth. The man with the bone staff knelt on the ground in pain, wailing like a trapped beast. His eyes were empty. He raised the bone staff high, aimed at the top of his head, and struck it down with all his might. His wife and daughter were already dead. What was the point of him living? The faint sound of breathing interrupted the man's movements. He turned around stiffly and picked up the dying child with trembling hands. Yun Sheng's eyes widened, and the man's face was reflected in her dark eyes. It was a young man who had just become a father. He should have been happy, but the man in front of him had disheveled hair and his face was covered in wounds. Even so, it could not hide the man's once handsome silhouette and sharp edge. The man must have gone through a lot. There was only despair and sorrow in his dim eyes, just like a patient with a terminal illness. That kind of sorrow deeply stabbed Yun Sheng, who was a doctor. He had already lost the desire to live. She wanted to save him and let him find the will to live again. Yun Sheng waved her hands, held back the last bit of strength in her body and cried out. Wah! Hearing the cry, a strange light flashed across the man's dead eyes. His eyes gradually recovered their brightness. He picked up the baby and staggered toward a small village in front of him. Behind the man, the dark dawn quietly ended, and the newly risen sun illuminated the entire land. Time flew by. 6 years had passed. When the fiery red hemostatic flowers bloomed all over the medicine fields of Banana Leaf Village, a magic initiation ceremony was being held in the temple of Banana Leaf Village. Magic element perception, none. The white-haired sorcerer looked at the pitch-black magic crystal and shook his head. This was already the 3rd time. Yun Sheng, this child, had participated in the magic initiation ceremony of Banana Leaf Village since she was 3 years old. Not once had she been able to sense magic elements. Thank you, Grandpa Sorcerer. I will try again next year. Yun Sheng raised her head. She was only 5 or 6 years old, with an oval face and big eyes. Although her clothes were shabby, they were very clean. Due to her poor family background and lack of nutrition, she was thinner and shorter than her peers. After learning the results of the magic initiation ceremony, Yun Sheng's young face showed an indifference that did not match her age. Shameless fellow. The daughter of a fake sorcerer still dares to come to the temple. Isn't she afraid of being punished by the Lord Sorcerer? When leaving the temple, a few children who had also participated in the magic initiation ceremony spat at her. Yun Sheng nimbly dodged and avoided it. Her eyes were as cold as a wild cat as she glared at the child who was causing trouble. Yun Sheng's eyes seemed to have magic. When she stared at the child who spat at her, a pair of seductive eyes appeared in his mind. The pitch-black eyes were like a bottomless starry sky, as if they could completely swallow a person's consciousness. The child suddenly felt a buzzing sound in his head. His legs turned to jelly, and he sat on the ground and fainted. The child's strange behavior alarmed the surrounding villagers, who immediately surrounded him. Yun Sheng retracted her gaze and took the opportunity to sneak out of the temple. Following the small path, she walked all the way to the highest hill in the village. The scenery in Banana Leaf Village was very beautiful. The spring sun was shining brightly, and the warm spring breeze blew across the bristlegrass on the hill. A few red-tailed dragonflies landed on the sharp blades of grass. At the bottom of the hill, a jade-like river flowed. Yun Sheng lay down with the bristlegrass in her mouth and looked at the blue sky. Shi Yin Yun Sheng was a female doctor with a modern soul. It had been 6 years since she transmigrated to the boundless land, where magic and martial arts were respected. From an orphan to a young village girl who depended on her alcoholic father for survival. They had the same name, but only differed by a surname. Yet, their talents were worlds apart. The calamity when she was born caused Yunshang's veins to be weak since young. She could not practice martial arts, could not sense the magical elements, and could not practice magic. From a female doctor who was feared by both the good and the bad, to a good-for-nothing who could not practice magic and martial arts? Yunshang sat up, and a confident smile appeared on her face. Good-for-nothing, ridiculous. She was definitely not a good-for-nothing. As long as she had the Shenong medical bangle, she would one day return to the top of the continent. Yunshang touched the jade bangle on her wrist. This jade bangle was the one that transmigrated with her. Since birth, it had been worn on Yunshang's wrist. It was also the only thing left on her that was related to her previous life. Yunshang's alcoholic father was also puzzled for a while. After many attempts, he was unable to take it off from his daughter's hand. Only then did the jade bangle escape the fate of being pawned by the alcoholic father in exchange for wine. Noon, the time of the day when the yangqi in the world was the most abundant. Yunshang sat cross-legged and formed a seal with her fingers, making a standard Taoist meditation posture. The jade bangle emitted a lustrous light. The sunlight seemed to be separated, and a large amount of multicolored light was absorbed into the bangle. As the jade bangle absorbed more and more light, a layer of mother-of-pearl floated on the surface of Yunshang's body. In the light, her facial features became more exquisite, and her figure was also like a willow, stretching out a little. A fine layer of sweat appeared on his forehead. The damaged tendons and meridians in her early years were like a gurgling stream filling up. More and more water accumulated in the stream, converging together to form a golden vein. With a boom, the internal strength that she had cultivated for 6 years was like a flood bursting through a dam. One of the 8 meridians of the human body, the Yangwei meridian, had been opened. Since Yunshang began cultivating the jade marrow method at the age of 3, she finally used the internal strength in her body to open the first meridian. Yunshang was immersed in cultivation. What she didn't know was that at this time, on a lush ancient banyan tree on the hillside, a pair of deep eyes saw this scene. The young man was lying on the trunk casually. It was a young man who didn't fit in with the simple atmosphere of Banana Leaf Village. The young man was not old, only about 10 years old. Although he was wearing ordinary coarse clothes, his wheat-colored skin and robust body showed a domineering aura that was not inferior to that of a veteran on the battlefield. Absorbing sun essence? Interesting, I didn't think that in such a small mountain village, there would be someone who knows such a profound method. The young man looked at Yunshang with interest. Suddenly Yunshang opened her eyes. Chapter 3. At the bottom of the hill, a few children around the age of 10 quickly ran up. Trash. It's this trash that caused me to faint and lose the chance to participate in the magic initiation. The child who had insulted Yunshang in the temple earlier pointed at Yunshang with a red face. You're the little trash Yunshang, the daughter of that fake magician? Grandpa Village Chief kindly let you stay in Banana Leaf Village, but you actually dared to bully my brother. Kneel down, kowtow to him, apologize, and hand over a silver coin. Then I'll let you go. The one who spoke was an arrogant youth. Behind him stood a few other youths of the same age. Unlike the ordinary children in Banana Leaf Village, the youth who spoke was wearing a brown training uniform. This indicated that he was a martial arts student from the town's martial arts center. The temple and martial arts center were the most basic facilities on the boundless continent. Every country had a branch temple from the village to the capital, and a martial arts center at the city level. When the children in the country reached the age of 3, regardless of whether they were boys or girls, they could sign up for the magic initiation at the temple and the physical fitness test at the martial arts center. Those who passed the test could enjoy a living allowance from the country, which was equivalent to a modern-day public expense student. However, these two had nothing to do with Yunshang. This was because Yunshang was trash. She was born unable to practice martial arts and had failed 3 magic initiation tests. Because of this, she was often ridiculed by the children in the village. Those who ridiculed her would always mysteriously faint or feel unwell, so no one dared to bully her directly. The elder brother of the boy who had provoked Yunshang in the temple was called Lei Hu. He was one of the few youths in the village who had been sent to the town's martial arts center to practice martial arts. He was also the leader of the children in the village. He had left home last year to practice martial arts and had just returned home a few days ago. This morning, when he found out that his brother had missed this year's magic initiation test because of Yun Shang, he couldn't help but fly into a rage. He brought a few of his close friends to find Yun Shang. The martial arts students from the town-level martial arts dojo had all practiced martial arts. This little girl had only practiced the basic absorption and expiration method, so she was unable to protect herself. She was afraid that she would be at a disadvantage. Under the tree, the young man's beautiful lips pursed. He lazily raised his hand and a few emerald leaves fell into his hand. Yun Shang's eyelids drooped, and her eyelashes covered the light in her eyes. Her cherry-colored lips burst out with a single word, "Get lost." As she spoke, she exerted strength in her legs. Her petite body was like a taut spring as she suddenly leaped towards Lei Hu. Her fist landed solidly on Lei Hu's face. Lei Hu did not expect her to hit him so easily. He also did not expect that a trash who could not practice martial arts would have such skills. Caught off guard, he was sent flying. His mouth was filled with a fishy liquid. Martial arts students were indeed martial arts students. They had undergone specialized combat training. Although he was hit unexpectedly, Lei Hu immediately regained his senses. He roared, and a brownish-yellow battle aura surged out of his body. His back arched high, and his eyes flashed with a green light. He had transformed into a hungry dog. His strong limbs pulled back in midair, forcibly stopping his momentum of landing. His movements sped up several times and like a hungry dog, he pounced towards Yun Shang with the force of crushing rocks. This is a martial arts student who has learned basic martial arts. His strength is enough to crush rocks. She's probably at a disadvantage. In the young man's hand, a few green leaves were injected with a gust of gang qi. The leaves immediately became taut like flying knives. Just as he was about to throw them, the young man's ears twitched slightly, and his hands stopped moving. On the hillside, Yun Shang also sensed the change in Lei Hu's body. Her pupils constricted, and a faint golden light floated out. In her eyes, Lei Hu's lightning-fast movements were broken down into a few slow movements like a slow-motion movie. Yun Shang's mind moved slightly, and a beast bone needle appeared at her fingertips. She had repeated the same mistake again, and there was a limit to her patience. Just as Yun Shang and Lei Hu were about to collide head-on, there was a loud splash of water. In the small river below the hillside, two streams of water vapor rose up like spiritual snakes. The water vapor condensed into water droplets in the air, and the water droplets quickly transformed into two water balls. The water balls were like two cannonballs, smashing onto Yun Shang and Lei Hu. The two of them were instantly drenched by the water balls. "Both of you stop." When the water balls landed, an old man with a wide mouth and a lion's face appeared on the hillside with a magic staff in his hand. Like an eagle catching chicks, he grabbed Yun Shang and Lei Hu by their collars and separated them. The moment the old man appeared, the children on the hillside immediately scattered like birds and beasts. Grandpa Village Chief. When Lei Hu saw the old man, he immediately lost his earlier awe-inspiring aura and loosened his fist, admitting that he was unlucky. The village chief of Banana Leaf Village was an old man in his 60s. Everyone in the village respected him because he was not only the village chief, but also one of the few people in Banana Leaf Village who was proficient in two types of magic. He was a sorcerer. In the Boundless Land, people who knew how to use magic elements would be given various titles of sorcerer. Those who had received magic enlightenment and could sense at least one type of magic element were magic apprentices. Above magic apprentices were sorcerers. Sorcerers could store at least one type of magic element in their body and use beginner-level magic to attack or defend. In the Boundless Land, the number of people who could sense magic elements was about 1%. As for sorcerers, the ratio was even less than 1 in 1,000. Most sorcerers could only sense one type of magic element. There might not even be 1 in 10,000 people who could sense two types of magic elements. The village chief of Banana Leaf Village was a water and wind sorcerer who served in the army in his early years. After he retired and returned to his hometown to take up the position of village chief. Lei Hu, as a registered martial arts student, you actually bullied a little girl who is younger than you and doesn't know martial arts. Aren't you afraid of being laughed at if this gets out? The village chief happened to be looking for Yun Shang. He had watched Yun Shang grow up and knew that at this time every day, the little girl must have run to the hillside of the village to take an afternoon nap. Who knew that when he approached, he would hear the sound of fighting. I didn't bully her, Grandpa Village Chief. She is very powerful. Lei Hu had to admit that Yun Shang's reaction was stronger than any of his peers in the martial arts hall. Lei Hu was indignant. He pointed at Yun Shang, but when he saw Yun Shang's expression he was dumbfounded. Grandpa Village Chief. The little girl who had been glaring at him covetously a moment ago was now teary-eyed. She pouted and looked pitiful as if she had been severely bullied. Not only Lei Hu, but even the unfamiliar youth under the banyan tree couldn't help but smile after hearing Yun Shang's complaint. Lei Hu, you're still quibbling. The village chief had a headache. He grabbed Lei Hu's hand and waved the magic bone staff in his hand. A light green wind elemental power turned into a rope and tied Lei Hu up. Lei Hu only felt his body lighten as he was thrown down the hillside. You only come home once every 3 months. If you don't want to be punished by confinement, go home immediately. The next time I see you bullying Yun Shang, I will confiscate 1 month of your allowance. Lei Hu didn't dare to say anything else. He could only leave with a face full of resentment. Yun Shang, if anyone bullies you again, come and tell Grandpa Village Chief. The village chief put down Yun Shang lovingly and patted her head. As the village chief, he shouldn't be overly biased towards a child in the village. However, Yun Shang was about the same age as his granddaughter, but she was far more obedient and sensible than the other children in the village. She learned how to do housework at the age of 3, and could read and write at the age of 4. She was also the one who took care of the Yun family's herbal field. Her father was mocked as a fake sorcerer, and the children in the village kept finding fault with her, but she never cried or made a fuss. How did such a child end up with such a father? The village chief's stern face couldn't help but show some pity. Grandpa Village Chief, are you looking for me? Yun Shang shrunk her little head. She wasn't used to the village chief's overly affectionate behavior. Chapter 4. 6 years had passed, but in her previous life, Yun Shang had experienced Lu Minglang's betrayal and the premature death of her family, so she was very wary of people. Apart from the alcoholic man who had given birth to her and raised her, Yun Shang had always deliberately kept a distance from others. The money from the last sale of the hemostatic flower has already been distributed. After your family's hemostatic flower was sent to the pharmacy in town, it was evaluated as a second-grade herb, and the price was 10% higher than the other farmers in the village. Here are 11 copper coins, keep it well. This money was originally supposed to be given to your father, but I was afraid that he would use it to buy wine again, so I gave it to you. The village chief was used to Yun Shang's reaction, so his expression was normal. He took out 11 copper coins and gave them to Yun Shang. Banana Leaf Village was located in Zhou State, which was a country with 4 seasons like spring. All kinds of crops grew luxuriantly here. The soil and water of Banana Leaf Village were especially suitable for growing herbs. Every family in the village had a medicinal field. Yun Shang's family also had a few mu of medicinal fields. They grew a type of raw material used to refine the basic magic hemostatic medicine, the hemostatic flower. Every time the herbs matured, the village would organize people to purchase them and transport them to town to be sold to the pharmacy. Yun Shang's medicinal field was always able to grow herbs of superior quality, even with the same water and soil. There were also villagers who secretly went to Yun Shang's medicinal field to peek, hoping to find some secret, but they waited for several days and didn't see any special fertilizer. Grandpa Village Chief, how can I become a magician? Yun Shang thought for a moment and asked. To become a magician, you must first become a magic apprentice, and a magic apprentice must be able to feel any of the 4 major elements: earth, water, wind, and fire. Earth is yellow, water is blue, wind is green, and fire is red. The village chief paused. He thought of the scene when Yun Shang was enlightened in magic and couldn't help but sigh. Then is there a way to let a person who can't feel magic elements feel magic elements? Yun Shang didn't give up and asked. This is very difficult, but if you can find the moonlight grass, you might be able to feel a little bit of the magical elements. The moonlight grass was a rare medicinal herb that could only be cultivated in the medicine shops in the city. Legend has it that a few decades ago, wild moonlight grass appeared in the mountains behind our village. However, that is only a legend. No one has ever seen it, the village chief recalled. Yunsheng secretly remembered the name of the moonlight grass that could change one's magical constitution. Inadvertently, she glanced at the village head's face and saw that his face was yellow and his complexion was not very good. Grandpa Village Head. Do you feel that your abdomen is bloated these days and your body is not feeling well? When the village chief heard this, he coughed a few times and thought to himself, my stomach has been feeling uncomfortable for the past few days, but it's not a serious problem. Coincidentally, the magician in charge of medical treatment at the Temple of Magic had retired from his hometown, so I delayed it. I didn't expect Yunsheng to find out about it. Yunsheng gestured for the village chief to bend down. She held one of the village chief's palms with her small hand and pressed the corner of his index finger with her thumb. The village chief instantly felt his stomach squirming, and he felt a surge of urination. Grandpa Village Head. This is called the Shangyang acupoint. If your stomach is not feeling well, just press here twice a day and you will see the effect. Yunsheng was a straightforward person. Although she did not say anything on the surface, she remembered how good the village chief was to the Yun family. When the village chief saw Yunsheng's serious look, he was amused. Yunsheng, where did you learn these little tricks from? I think your father knows less than you. I read it from the medicine encyclopedia at home. Yunsheng's eyes flashed with a hint of surprise. Although the boundless world was slightly different from the modern world, the human body structure was the same. Yunsheng's father came to Banana Leaf Village 6 years ago. When he came, he was carrying a baby girl and a few thick books. One of them was a medicine encyclopedia. Yunsheng was smart since she was young. She self-learned many herbs and medical knowledge from the medicine encyclopedia. The village chief was also used to it and did not ask further. The village chief's stomach was in pain, so it was not good for him to stay any longer. Before he left, he even reminded her. A new sorcerer came to Banana Leaf Temple. He wants to recruit a herb gatherer to help him. You don't need to know magic. You only need to know the basic collection and classification of herbs. You can get 20 copper coins a month. I think you are quite suitable. Go home and ask. If your father agrees, I will recommend you. After saying that, the village chief felt his stomach growling again. He hurriedly activated the wind and disappeared from the hillside. Not long after the village chief left, Yunsheng turned around and said to the ancient banyan tree, have you seen enough? Come out. On top of the ancient banyan tree, a figure landed lightly. Yunsheng's eyes and ears were sharper than ordinary people. She had already heard the faint breathing sound under the banyan tree. Seeing the person, Yunsheng was slightly stunned. His black clothes were like the night. His high nose bridge was like a knife and hatchet. Just by standing there, he had a feeling that the sun was overshadowed. Although he was still young, his elegance and aura were already beginning to show signs of him. Who was he? Yunsheng was sure that he was not from Banana Leaf Village. Dangerous. This person was very dangerous. Yunsheng was alert. The bone needles that were hidden in her sleeves came out again. Yunsheng's movements were very light, but when she made her move, her sleeves could not help but make a sound in the air. The strange youth's ears twitched slightly. Yunsheng keenly noticed that something was wrong with him. The youth's appearance and figure were almost perfect. His facial features were exquisite but did not make people feel feminine. His figure was tall but did not lose his masculine aura. Among his facial features, his pair of soul-sucking eyes were the most eye-catching. His eyes were like a phoenix, but for some reason, his eyes were covered with a layer of mist, making people unable to see the color of his eyes. As a doctor in her previous life, Yunsheng could immediately confirm that he was blind. Seeing that the other party was blind, Yunsheng was relieved. She was about to put away the bone needles in her hands. Who knew that in a flash, her wrist was firmly grasped. The difference in physical strength between a youth and a child caused Yunsheng to be caught off guard and embraced. A pleasant smell of banyan leaves accompanied by a pressing body heat assaulted Yunsheng's senses. Yunsheng's limbs were ingeniously restrained. Put away your claws, little wild cat. Weapons are useless against me. My eyes are blind, but my heart is clear. The youth's voice was very pleasant to hear. When it fell into her ears, It was as soft as a swan feather. He held Yunshang's hand and rested his chin on Yunshang's head, feeling the comfortable furry feeling under his chin, and at the same time being surprised by the abnormally petite figure in his arms. A trace of displeasure flashed across the young man's face. Why was she so thin and small? Carrying her felt like hitting her bones. Just as the youth was frowning, he suddenly felt a pain in his throat. After the pain was like being bitten by a mosquito, the youth's body stiffened. Although he could not see, he knew that the hidden weapon that was pressed against his throat would pierce his throat with the unknown weapon in the girl's hand. Fuzi already finished her old book, The Genius Devil Concubine. If you haven't read it, you can read it. Chapter 5. A weapon that could make him feel pain? Could it be that it was made from some rare metal, or the bone of a 100-year-old beast? It seemed that he had underestimated the ferocity of this little wild cat. The young man's lips curled into a devilish smile. He was not a person who liked to smile, but when he smiled it was like the spring breeze blowing on the surface of a lake. His gorgeous face dazzled people's eyes. The young man did not know that Yunshang was only holding an ordinary bone needle made from the bone of a 5-year-old beast. It was only because she was able to accurately identify the acupoints that she was able to hit him. At this moment, the bone needle in Yunshang's hand felt a strong suction force. The bone needle that was pressed against the young man's throat strangely sank into the young man's throat. No matter how hard she tried, she could not pull it out. Yunshang was shocked. She understood that even though the young man in front of her was blind, his ability to identify the location of sounds had already been trained to the point of perfection. Compared to the average person, his reaction was more sensitive. His cultivation was far beyond that of a martial arts student like Lei Hu. With her current trashy physique, she was definitely not his opponent. Yunshang's lips curled into a sly smile. What she knew was not just ordinary acupuncture. A certain acupoint on the young man's body suddenly felt numb, as if it was struck by lightning. Following that, an uncontrollable drowsiness attacked him. In the next second he lost consciousness and fainted on the ground. Yunshang kicked the unconscious youth on the ground and made a face. Consider yourself lucky. If it wasn't for the fact that this body is still young and has only opened the first meridian, this hidden needle would have been enough to cripple you. In her previous life, Yunshang was known as the Yen Needle. It was said that she could use a golden needle to bring the dead back to life. Very few people knew, including Lu Minglang, that Yunshang's real family heritage was unknown. Not to mention a mere city health bureau chief. Even a few old leaders in the country who could not be named were once guests of the Yen clan. This was because the Yen family and their acupuncture techniques were from the most ancient and mysterious family of miracle doctors in Wuxia, the Yen family of Shenong. Yin Yunshang's grandfather was the 380th and 90th generation descendant of the Shenong family in Wuxia. Several generations of the Yen family had passed away at an untimely age. Yunshang's parents had passed away in a traffic accident in her early years. Yunshang was raised by her grandfather alone. When she graduated from medical college, her grandfather passed away. Yunshang's jade bracelet was a family heirloom. She had been wearing it since she was a child. It was said that it was made of the ancient divine jade, Xinyuan Zhilong jade, which could prolong one's life. Wearing it, Yunshang was able to recover in a short time no matter how serious her injuries were. If it wasn't for the fatal car accident in her previous life, she wouldn't have died so young. Other than the Shenong medical bracelet, the Yen family also left behind 4 ancestral techniques. They were the Jade Marrow technique, Shenong Eye, Trillium Hand, and the Spirit Healing Needle. In her previous life, Yunshang had been severely injured when she was a baby. In this life, she had relied on the Shenong medical bracelet to recover her internal organs. At the same time, she had also practiced the 4 techniques. Finally, she had gradually recovered about 10% of her previous life strength. Today, she had opened up the Yangwei meridian, which meant that she had officially removed the old injuries in her body. It also allowed her to use her internal energy to form the first needle of the Spirit Healing Needle, the Needle of Internal Energy. The Spirit Healing Needle was divided into Yin Needle and Yang Needle. The Yang Needle was a visible needle that was exerted by hand. The Yin Needle was an invisible needle that was exerted by internal energy. It was a pity that with Yunshang's current internal energy, She could only use the e-needle once a day. Today, she had opened up the Yangwei meridian, and her internal energy had increased. The first dark needle of internal energy had been produced in her body. Just now, she had used her internal energy to break through the acupuncture point and hit the youth sleeping acupuncture point. Yun Sheng was not a bloodthirsty person, and the youth did not do anything excessive to her. Moreover, he was blind. Yun Sheng guessed that even if he woke up, he might not be able to recognize her. Therefore, she decided to spare his life for the time being. It was getting late, and her father would be home soon. Yun Sheng did not stay any longer and went straight home. Yun Sheng originally thought that she would be able to make the youth sleep for at least 12 to 14 hours by using the hidden needle qi to attack the youth's sleeping acupoint. Who would have thought that after only 2 hours the youth would wake up? It was not that Yun Sheng's spirit healing needle had failed. It was because she was still young in this life, and her jade marrow skill was insufficient. In addition, the youth was proficient in martial arts. The e-needle was only 30% effective in breaking through the acupuncture point. After the young man woke up, he touched his sleeping acupoint that was faintly aching. "You're the only one who can make me suffer twice in one day. Little wild cat, the next time I meet you, I will definitely pull out all your claws and teeth." The youth resentfully walked down the hill and walked in the direction of the village temple. Yun Sheng hurriedly went down the hill and ran towards the northeast of Banana Leaf Village. There were a few thatched huts facing the sun, 3 to 4 mu of medicinal fields, and a row of uneven short fences. This was Yun Sheng's home in this life. Seeing that her father had not returned home, Yun Sheng washed the rice and vegetables. Soon, the smell of food floated out of the thatched hut. Yun Sheng took out the 11 copper coins and put 10 of them into the big broken porcelain bowl on the table. The hemostatic flowers earned her 1 copper coin more than she expected. She put away the copper coin and found a big wooden box under the bed. She opened the wooden box and put the copper coin into a small cloth bag. There were already 13 copper coins in the cloth bag. This was Yun Sheng's secret little treasury. Even her alcoholic relatives did not know about the existence of this little treasury. "As long as I save 15 copper coins, I can ask Grandpa Village Head to buy a hemostatic medicine. 100 hemostatic flowers can only be sold for 10 copper coins. 2 hemostatic flowers can make a hemostatic medicine. The worst hemostatic medicine can be sold for 15 copper coins. If I can research the composition of the hemostatic medicine, it can greatly improve the family's life." Yun Sheng counted the copper coins in the bag and her face lit up. When she put the cloth bag back into the wooden box, she noticed that there was a shabby bone ring at the bottom of the box. The ring was very simple and looked like it had been worn for a long time. Looking at the size of the ring, it did not seem to belong to her father. Yun Sheng took out the ring and put it on the table. Her father had not returned yet and the meal was almost ready. She remembered that because she had participated in the magic enlightenment today, she did not have time to weed and water the medicinal field. Yun Sheng carried the wooden bucket and walked out of the door. She was small and thin, and the wooden bucket was half her height. In the past, when she carried water, she would sway. But today, she had opened her first meridian, so when she carried the bucket, her steps were much steadier. Children from poor families took charge of the household early. Yun Sheng was already an adult in her 20s. These household chores were ordinary to her. In her previous life, when she was still a baby, her parents had already passed away. In this life, she did not want to experience the pain of a child wanting to take care of her but not waiting for her parents. No matter how the villagers looked at the drunken relatives, Yun Sheng would never forget the fire that filled the sky 6 years ago. Although she was not very clear about the magic system of this world, Yun Sheng vaguely knew that her father was not a fake magician. He was a magician much more powerful than Grandpa Village Head. Outside the short fence, a tall man was standing there unknowingly. The man saw Yun Sheng, who was like a little quail, but did not say anything. He just quietly watched from the side. "Ninth sister, our child is already 6 years old. She should be a proud daughter of heaven, but because of me..." The man's thoughts were interrupted. On the other side of the fence, Yun Sheng's movement attracted the man's attention. Chapter 6. What attracted Yun Songhai's attention was Yun Sheng's weeding action. At this time of the year, Most of the medicine fields in Banana Leaf Village had just been planted not long ago. The Yun family's medicine fields were no exception. The tender shoots of the hemostatic flowers had just started to grow. The hemostasis flower was the main medicinal field crop in Banana Leaf Village. It was also the Yun family's only source of income. The hemostasis flower bloomed once every 3 months. After it bloomed, the stamens were collected and dried under the sun. It could be used as a raw material for hemostasis. However, the flowers were not easy to grow. Due to the hot and humid climate in Banana Leaf Village, the weeds reproduced easily. The weeds that were removed the next day would sprout again the next day. The weeds and the hemostatic flowers looked exactly the same during their budding period. When they were mixed together, it was difficult to distinguish them. The ordinary farmers in the village would wait until the hemostatic flowers grew a little before they started to remove the weeds. However, in this way, they would lose the best weeding period and affect the later planting of the hemostatic flowers. Yun Shang came from a medical family. She knew that the planting of herbs in their infancy was the most important. She would not allow such a situation to occur. After watering them, the small Yun Shang bent down and looked at the weeds in the flowers like a female leopard pouncing on its prey. A golden light flashed across her pitch-black eyes. The first level of the Shenong Eye Minute Subtlety. Yun Shang's Shenong Eye was passed down from her ancestors. It was divided into 4 levels: Minute Subtlety, Insight, Inner Vision, and God's Trace. Not only did it increase one's visual acuity, but it also had a special hypnotic effect. It was said that when one cultivated it to the highest level, one could move before the enemy. However, the Shenong Eye was very difficult to cultivate. Even in Yun Shang's previous life, she had only cultivated it to the insight level. She could see through the age of the medicine and the illness of the human body with just a glance. Even so, she was a rare genius in the Yen family. Most of the Yen family members could only cultivate it to minute subtlety. Legend had it that the ancestor of the Shenong Eye, Yen Di, had cultivated it to the 3rd level, inner vision. He could see through the organs and veins of all living things. Under the effect of Shenong's pupil, the features of the hemostatic flowers and weeds in front of Yun Shang are magnified several times. If the tip of the leaf was hairless, it would be wild grass. If the leaf was round and hairy, it would be a hemostatic flower. Others might not be able to tell the difference between wild grass and hemostatic flower buds, but under her Shenong pupil, it was very clear. Yun Shang's 5 slender fingers suddenly moved quickly. Like a torrential rain, she shuttled back and forth in the medicinal field. In just a moment, a pile of weeds had been completely uprooted by her. The first level of the trillium hand could increase a person's hand speed by 3 times. This was also the reason why the Yun family's hemostatic flower was rated as a 2nd-grade herb. Looking at the weeds on the ground with satisfaction, Yun Shang breathed a sigh of relief. 2 months later, the hemostatic flower would definitely usher in a big harvest. At that time, she would have enough money to buy the hemostatic medicine. A dark cloud covered the top of her head. Yun Shang hurriedly stood up. When she saw the man behind her, 2 small dimples appeared at the side of her mouth. "Father, you're back." Yun Shang's father in this life, Yun Songhai, glanced at the weeds on the ground. He grunted and walked into the straw hut. Yun Shang was used to her father's indifference. In any case, her father still grunted today. Seemed like he was in a good mood. Perhaps she could ask the village chief about that matter later. As usual, the father and daughter ate some simple porridge and wild vegetables. Yun Songhai seemed to be hungry. He ate several bowls of porridge in one go. Yun Shang only ate in small bites. In her mind, she was thinking about how to discuss with Yun Songhai about going to the Dharma temple to be an herb gatherer. "I heard that you went to participate in the magic initiation again. I've told you many times that you're not allowed to participate. What's the use of learning magic? You can't even protect the most important person to you. It's all a trick to fool people." Yun Songhai put down his bowl, his gaze cold. Every time Yun Songhai revealed such a gaze, Yun Shang would shudder for no reason. Although Yun Songhai was a decadent drunkard, Yun Shang felt that he was much colder than the political bigwigs and mafia godfathers in her previous life. Yun Shang's eyes were a little hot. She clenched her chopsticks tightly. "Father, if you don't like it, Shang won't participate in the magic initiation anymore." Yun Shang had failed the magic initiation 3 times. Unless she found the moonlight grass, she didn't plan to participate in the magic initiation anymore. However, this didn't mean that she had given up on learning magic. Seeing that his daughter's eyes were red like a rabbit's, Yun Songhai groaned again. He got up and took the copper coins from the big porcelain bowl. The medical system of the boundless world was slightly different from the modern Eastern and Western medical systems that Yun Shang had mastered. If Yun Shang wanted to completely recover the state of her previous life, she would have to learn the medical system of the boundless world again. Father, seeing that Yun Songhai was about to leave again, Yun Shang hurriedly asked, Shang-er wants to go to the Dharma temple to help the new magicians take care of the herbs. Shang-er can't learn magic, but Shang-er wants to learn medicine. There's always a way out. Since Shang-er can't learn magic, Shang-er will definitely have other ways to protect herself and the people important to me. Use another way to protect herself and the people important to her? In Yun Songhai's eyes, there seemed to be a girl with a sweet smile. There was once a person who said the same thing in front of him. He recalled the scene of Yun Shang weeding in the herb field, and the scene of her flipping open the pharmacopoeia under the oil lamp several times in the dead of the night. In the past 6 years, this child had never opened her mouth to beg him. This was the first time that she had dared to speak her mind. If you want to learn, then go and learn. Since you have decided to do something, you have to stick to it until the end. You can't give up halfway. After you become a herb gatherer, you can't delay the herb field and housework, Yun Songhai said sternly. After saying that, he suddenly turned around and put back the 5 copper coins. Take the money and buy a new pair of straw sandals. Yun Shang lowered her head and looked at her feet. She realized that the straw sandal on her right foot was so worn that her big toe was exposed. After becoming a herb gatherer, she would definitely have to go up the mountain to gather herbs. The mountain roads were rugged, and without straw sandals, her feet would probably be worn out. Father, he still remembers me. Her heart warmed slightly, and Yun Shang nodded heavily. She then remembered something. Father, when I was packing the box, I found a ring. Is that ring yours? Yun Songhai glanced at the ancient ring on the table. When he saw the ring, he was stunned for a moment. He said with a slight bitterness, that was left behind by your mother. It's an item from her tribe. It's called zoolingualism. If you like it, you can keep it. After saying that, Yun Songhai went out. He went to drink again. Yun Shang knew that he wouldn't come back until it was dark. Although her father was against her learning magic, he had at least agreed to let her go to the temple to study medicine. She had also received one of her mother's relics. Yun Shang was in a good mood. After cleaning up the dishes, she picked up the ring called zoolingualism. The ring seemed to have been around for a long time, and its surface was covered with dust. Yun Shang took some water to wash the ring a few times. She realized that she could only wash away the dust on the surface. However, she couldn't wash away the layer of mud-like substance that covered the ring. This layer of mud blocked the original pattern on the ring. Yun Shang didn't mind and put the ring on her finger. The ring was a little big, so Yun Shang found a few strings and wrapped them around the ring a few times to adjust the ring to a suitable size. It's about time. I'll go find Grandpa Village Head and tell him that my father has agreed to let me become a herb gatherer. Yun Shang shook her finger to make sure that the ring wouldn't fall off before leaving the house. Chapter 7. The village chief's house was not far from the Yun family's house. She only needed to go around 2 hills to reach it. Yun Shang's physical strength had improved recently. In less than 15 minutes, she could already see the village chief's stone house. When she arrived, the village chief was not at home. However, his wife Granny Lu was there. She told Yun Shang that the village chief had gone to the temple to welcome the new magician. An archmage? Isn't there only magicians in Banana Leaf Village? Yun Shang saw that Granny Lu was busy with farm work. She helped her with the farm work while asking about the new magician. Although she could not sense the magical elements, Yun Shang had been in and out of the temple many times. She more or less knew about the magic system. In a remote village like Banana Leaf Village, most of the people stationed in the village temple were magicians. This time, the magician who came to the temple was an archmage. It was no wonder that Yun Shang was curious. Granny Lu smiled kindly and said, according to the country's rules, It's already good enough that our temple can invite a magician who knows basic medical skills. Our luck is not bad. The village's first-level magician just happened to be a Archmage Yang from Watershore City. He likes places with beautiful scenery, so he chose our village. It is said that he also knows light magic. Yun Shang was shocked when she heard that. The magic in the boundless world was divided into the 4 major nature magic, according to their attributes. They were earth, wind, fire, and water. However, above the 4 major nature magic, there were other secondary magic. Among them, light magic was one of the most obscure and difficult to learn mutated magic. It was also known as holy magic. It was a miraculous healing spell that was beyond the understanding of modern medicine. Light magic sounded contrary to modern medicine, but it was also the most attractive to Yun Shang. It seemed that she had to think of a way to become a herbalist this time. After knowing that the other party was a powerful archmage, Yun Shang was even more determined to become a herbalist. Yun Shang wanted to ask more about the new archmage, but before she could ask, Granny Lu's face suddenly turned green. Her short and stout body fell forward. Fortunately, Yun Shang reacted quickly and supported her. Granny Lu was only 60 years old. She was from the mountains and had a strong body. How could she faint for no reason? Granny Lu, what's wrong? Yun Shang saw Granny Lu's face clearly. She was pale, sweating profusely, and her lips were slightly purple. She hurriedly helped Granny Lu to sit against a tree and checked her tongue and pupils. The coating on her tongue was normal, and her pupils were slightly dilated. Granny Lu was already a little delirious. It looked like poisoning, but it wasn't. Yun Shang looked carefully and found that there was a small wound on Granny Lu's ankle. The blood on the wound hadn't dried yet, and the color of the blood was red. He placed Granny Lu under the cool shade of a tree. The wound was fresh and the blood was bright red. It was not a wound caused by a poisonous snake or bee. He had to find out the cause of the wound before he could treat it. Yun Shang lowered her head and looked around. In the direction where Granny Lu was standing earlier, Yun Shang found the culprit that caused Granny Lu to be poisoned. It was a cluster of short wild flowers. The leaves were needle-shaped, and the stems were full of barbs. Every plant had small lotus-shaped flowers. 3-petal mandala lotus? When Yun Shang found the poisonous flower, her face showed some joy. 3-petal mandala lotus was a rare medicinal herb. Most people in the boundless continent didn't recognize this kind of wild flower. However, Yun Shang's medical knowledge from her previous life told her that this flower was an excellent raw material, used by the nomads in ancient times to develop plant anesthetics like mefizin. Granny Lu must have been accidentally hooked by the thorny stem of the mandala lotus when she was clearing the weeds. The mandala lotus anesthetic entered her body, causing her to feel dizzy. It wasn't difficult to treat the mandala lotus anesthetic. Its petals contained anesthetic poison, but its leaves were the best antidote. Yun Shang carefully plucked the leaves and squeezed the juice on Granny Lu's wound. After cleaning Granny Lu's wound, Yun Shang dug up the mandala lotus by its roots. This medicinal herb was very useful to her. After a while, Granny Lu woke up. Yun Shang knew some unorthodox medical knowledge. Sometimes she was even more useful than the sorcerers in the temple. Ignoring Yun Shang's repeated excuses, Granny Lu took out a pair of exquisitely made straw sandals from home. Yun Shang, this pair of straw sandals was originally made for your sister Xiuxiu. It's a pity that it's too small. Granny thinks that it's suitable for you. Just keep it. Xiuxiu was the village head's youngest granddaughter. She was 3 to 4 years older than Yun Shang. Yun Shang looked at the pair of sandals. She didn't refuse and took the sandals. Coincidentally, the village head's grandfather had also returned home. When he heard Yun Shang say that she was going to the temple, he didn't say anything else and told Yun Shang to wait at the temple's entrance in 5 days. Yun Shang thanked the village head and his wife. Then, she took the straw sandals and the mandala lotus that she had just dug up and walked to the other side of the village. Yun Songhai had left 5 copper coins for Yun Shang to buy the straw sandals. Since Yun Shang had gotten the straw sandals for free, she had saved 5 copper coins. The village's prices were low. 5 copper coins was not a small sum. With these 5 copper coins, Yun Shang could start developing the hemostatic agent earlier. After Yun Shang discovered that the small mandala lotus could paralyze the strong Granny Lu, an idea popped up in her mind. The appearance of the Thunder Tiger brothers and that unfamiliar youth made her realize that in this continent where magic and martial arts ran rampant, it was obviously unreliable for a useless person like her to rely on the bone needle to protect herself. She had to find a better way to protect herself. At the entrance of the village was a blacksmith shop. Just as she approached, she heard a series of clanking sounds. A blacksmith with muscles as big as a small hill, wearing a coarse cloth sack, was waving a large iron hammer and hammering away at the red-hot soldering iron. He was the only blacksmith in Banana Leaf Village, Tai Gang. Tai Gang from the blacksmith shop and Yun Songhai were drinking buddies. When he had nothing to do, he would go to Yun Shang's house to drink a few cups. He only had a mischievous son. He had always been jealous of Yun Songhai for having such an obedient and sensible daughter. Seeing Yun Shang come to the door alone, Tai Gang opened his big mouth and said loudly, "Yun Shang, are you here to get the bone needles?" "Yes, Uncle Tai. Have you finished the bone needles I asked you to make for me last time?" In Yun Shang's previous life, she used gold and silver needles for acupuncture. However, after coming to the boundless continent, the smelting technology of this era was far behind the modern era, not to mention a small mountain village like Banana Leaf Village. Even the best blacksmith in the village, Tai Gang, would find it difficult to make acupuncture needles of such high purity. Fortunately, there was a type of bone needle in this era. This kind of needle was made from animal bones. Although it wasn't as nimble as gold or silver needles, it was very sturdy and durable. Most of the villagers used it to sew and mend clothes, but Yun Shang used it for other purposes. Yun Shang took the bone needles and examined them. There were a total of 10 needles of various sizes. Tai Gang's craftsmanship was very good. The bone needles were polished until they were smooth and durable. Yun Shang was about to thank Tai Gang when she suddenly saw an inconspicuous knife on the blacksmith table beside Tai Gang. When she saw the shape of the knife, Yun Shang's eyebrows twitched. She almost blurted out, "Scalpel!" Chapter 8. Scalpel. The scalpel in the blacksmith shop had a blade like a willow leaf, about 5 to 6 centimeters long. Its size and sharpness were about the same as the clinical scalpel Yun Shang used in her previous life in the medical university. In her previous life, although Yun Shang was born in the Eastern medical family, her grandfather was an open-minded person. He thought that Chinese medicine and Western medicine were equally profound, so when he taught Yun Shang the essence of the Eastern medical system, he also encouraged Yun Shang to join the formal Western medical system. With a few years of medical university education, coupled with Yun Shang's Shenong eyes and trillium hands, Yun Shang was famous in the medical university for her quick knife skills. In her dissection class, she even set a record for taking 1 minute to remove a cancerous organ from a rabbit and stitching it perfectly. Initially, she thought that she would never see a scalpel again after arriving at the boundless land. However, this willow leaf-like scalpel in front of her caught her attention. That is a scalpel made from the golden rhinoceros boar's tusk. A few days ago, a hunter from the village went into the mountains to hunt for a golden rhinoceros boar, but the cunning fellow slipped away and only managed to cut off half of the boar's tusk. Half of the boar's tusk was not worth much, so the hunter brought it to my shop to see if he could polish it into something useful. In the end, he only managed to polish it into this small scalpel. It is sharp enough, but it is too small, so no one can use it. Tai Gang shook his head when he saw the scalpel. The boundless land was a special land. The spiritual energy here was abundant, giving birth to countless magical species and many mysterious powers that could not be explained in the modern era. Not only were there mages and warriors on this land, the wild beasts that lived on this land were also very strong. Just their appearance alone was several times that of the wild beasts in the modern era. Other than a small number of domesticated wild beasts, there were many highly dangerous wild beasts living in the unknown deep mountains and forests. According to the different danger levels of the wild beasts, they were divided into wild beasts, magical beasts, and war beasts. The golden rhinoceros boar that Tai Gang mentioned was a magical beast, a rank 2 or 3 magical beast. It looked like a pig with a pair of barbed fangs. The golden rhinoceros boar was ferocious and had great destructive power to crops and livestock. Fortunately, it lived deep in the mountains and forests and rarely appeared in the villages. The golden rhino boar's tusks were very hard, comparable to refined metal. In a small mountain village where resources were scarce, The golden rhino boar's tusks were a rare tool for making daggers. If it was a complete golden rhino boar's tusk, it could be sold for 1 silver coin in a village's blacksmith shop. The currency system of the boundless world was 10 copper coins for 1 silver coin, 10 silver coins for 1 gold coin, and 10 gold coins for 1 pure gold coin. 1 silver coin was enough for an ordinary farmer to live for a month. Unfortunately, when this golden rhino boar's tusk was delivered, it was already broken, so it was worthless. "Uncle Tai, can you sell this small knife to me? But I only have 2 copper coins left." Yun Shang spent 1 copper coin to buy 10 bone needles. She wanted to save 2 copper coins to buy hemostatic medicine, so she only had 2 copper coins left. "It's just a worthless knife. What kind of money is it? It can't be used as a kitchen knife, nor can it be used as a chopper. Take it as a gift from Uncle Tai for Xiao Shang to play with." Tai Gang smiled and passed the knife to Yun Shang. "Uncle Tai, can you make a small groove here and help me make a hemlock handle?" Yun Shang imitated the style of a modern scalpel and explained to Tai Gang in detail. Tai Gang also couldn't figure out why Yun Shang wanted to make this strange knife, but he still followed her instructions and made a scalpel, according to what she said. After receiving the modified scalpel, Yun Shang's face revealed a bright smile. She thanked Uncle Tai and left the blacksmith shop. Yun Shang went to the grocery store in Banana Leaf Village to buy a rice grinder and a rice grinder. She had a complete set of simple medicine-making tools. When she returned home, the sun was still early. Yun Shang's newly obtained 3-petal mandala lotus was split. Part of it was transplanted to the medicine field, and the other part was left for the first anesthetic experiment. After all, 3-petal mandala lotus was rare in Banana Leaf Village. Planting it properly would be beneficial for long-term use. The development of anesthetic medicine seemed simple, but it needed to be done carefully. Otherwise, one would be anesthetized like Granny Lu. Yun Sheng used beast skin to simply sew a mask and a pair of gloves. After tying up her hair, she then began to grind the medicine. After busying herself for 2 hours, she finally managed to refine the first batch of anesthetic liquid before Yun Songhai returned home for dinner. Yun Songhai was drunk again. After returning home, he didn't even eat dinner. He lay on the bed and fell asleep. The next morning, when the sun was high in the sky, Yun Songhai woke up dizzily and found that the stove had heated porridge. Porridge was the best for sobering up. There was a piece of paper on the stove that said, "Father, I went to the village head's house to help with the farm work. I might not be back at noon. Remember to drink the porridge while it's hot." Yun Songhai put down the paper and drank a few mouthfuls of porridge. As soon as the porridge entered his mouth, he felt a clear energy invade his body, and the hangover disappeared. He made a sound of surprise and took a closer look at the bowl. He found that it was actually medicinal porridge. "Jiuxing, it seems like our daughter has inherited your talent in the field of medicine. That's fine, let her develop towards medicine. Perhaps completely giving up on becoming a magician would instead be a happy thing for her." Yun Songhai strolled to the door. He raised his head to look at the sky and couldn't help but furrow his brows. In the sky, the sun seemed a little dim. An unusual red cloud shrouded the sun. "That's..." Yun Songhai's face was covered with a layer of haze, but then he smiled bitterly. "Yun Songhai, you can't even protect yourself now. Why are you meddling in other people's business?" He lowered his shoulders and walked to the tavern at the entrance of the village. In the rolling hills on a mountain that was about 1,000 meters high, Yun Shang carried a medicine basket and walked towards the mountainside. The Thousand Beast Graveyard Mountain was the name of the mountain. It wasn't because there were many wild beasts in the mountain. It was only some low-level magical beasts and wild beasts that appeared here. It was called the Thousand Beast Graveyard Mountain because a long time ago, legend said that there was a large beast graveyard in this mountain. No one knew the location and origin of the beast graveyard. The villagers who entered the mountain never found any large beast graveyard in the mountain. It was just that after a long time, the villagers who didn't know many words habitually called this mountain the Thousand Beast Graveyard Mountain. Yun Shang's purpose in coming to the Thousand Beast Graveyard Mountain today was to find some herbs that could strengthen one's body. It would be best if she could find the moonlight grass that the village head said could improve one's magical constitution. Secondly, she wanted to try out the anesthetic that she had just made yesterday. The forest around the Thousand Beast Graveyard Mountain was lush, and the smell of vegetation was very strong. Looking at it, it was so green that it was almost dripping. There were also a few low-level magical beasts in this area. Compared to Banana Leaf Village, there were more wild herbs in this area. Yunsheng looked around and found some ordinary herbs. She didn't find the moonlight grass that Grandpa Village had mentioned at all. After Yunsheng dug up some herbs, she suddenly heard a commotion in the grass behind her. A sense of danger surged. A level 1 magical beast, willow-green snake, as thick as a thumb, crawled out of the grass. The snake raised its head high. When it discovered Yunsheng, it spat out an emerald-green wind blade with a puff from its mouth. Chapter 9. Yunsheng had heard from the hunters in the village that the jade wind snake wasn't poisonous, but it could spit out a sharp willow wind blade from its mouth. This was Yunsheng's first time facing a magical beast directly. Even though she was quite old in her previous life, she didn't have magical beasts in her previous life. Fortunately, Yunsheng was used to seeing life and death, so her mental fortitude was strong. She only panicked for a moment and immediately regained her calmness. As a doctor, no matter what the situation was, they must remain absolutely calm. Between her fingers, there were a few more bone needles. These bone needles were different from the ones she had used before. These bone needles had been tempered with datura lotus juice, and the end of the bone needles was tied with a small finger-thick beast tendon. Narrowing her eyes, Yunsheng saw the direction of the wind blade and her body nimbly jumped between the bushes, dodging the wind blade. After the first stage willow-green snake spat out a wind blade, if it wanted to spit out a second wind blade, it would need to accumulate wind elements again. Taking advantage of the time when the willow-green snake's eyes turned green and it was accumulating wind elements, Yunsheng aimed the bone needles at the snake 7 inches. With a chi sound, the beast tendon tightened like a steel bar and the bone needles flashed with a cold light. The willow-green snake, who was originally holding its head high, was nailed to the ground by the bone needles. When the needles entered its body, the anesthetic immediately took effect. It struggled a few times, but the anesthetic on the needles had already taken effect. After a while, the willow-green snake fainted. Yunsheng's wrist shook and she picked up the unconscious snake and put away the bone needles. She aimed at the snake's gallbladder and with a shake of the scalpel, the sharp blade cut open and an intact snake gallbladder was dug out. Yunsheng washed the snake gallbladder with water from the water bag she carried with her and directly swallowed it into her stomach. When the snake gallbladder entered her body, a hot and cold feeling rose from her abdomen. The snake gallbladder nourished the yin and solidified the vitality. For Yunsheng, who was now weak and lacked nutrition, it could be considered a tonic. After digging out the snake's gallbladder, Yunsheng peeled off the snake's skin. The snake's stomach was empty. It seems that this is just a 1-year-old willow green. It's a pity that it doesn't have the soul stone that Uncle Hunter mentioned. Yunsheng's small face fell. In Banana Leaf Village, the hunters were much wealthier than the farmers. Most of the hunters lived in tiled houses made of stone. The reason was that hunters could enter the mountains to hunt wild beasts, and even low-level magical beasts. Every part of a magical beast was a treasure. Apart from the magical beast's skin, which could be used to make all kinds of armors, and the magical beast's meat could be sold, the most valuable parts of the magical beast's body were the magical beast's bones and magical beast's soul stones. Magical beast bones were the best materials for crafting magical bone staffs and weapons. As for magical beast soul stones, they had even more uses. It could be embedded into a magical bone staff to increase the condensation and usage of magical elements. It could also be used to replenish the magical elements used by spellcasters. It was even said that if one was lucky, the soul stones of some magical beasts could even carry magical techniques or martial techniques. The price of these soul stones was very high. It was a pity that magical beast bones and magical beast soul stones were hard to come by. Only magical beasts that were more than 10 years old could grow into bones that could be used to craft magical staffs and weapons. 10-year-old magical beast bones could be used to craft the lowest level of magical staffs and weapons. As for magical beast soul stones, it required magical beasts that were more than 10 years old to have a chance of obtaining them. Level 1 magical beasts were mostly 5 years old. Level 2 or even level 3 magical beasts could reach 10 years or even a few dozen years old. With Yunsheng's current strength, killing a level 1 magical beast was not a problem. If she encountered a group of level 1 or level 2 magical beasts, she would be at a disadvantage. Yunshang did the same thing and searched around the Thousand Beasts tomb. She killed a few willow-green snakes and found some commonly used herbs to strengthen the body. Unfortunately, she did not find the legendary moonlight grass that could change the magical constitution. It's almost noon. Let's go home first. If father can't find you at the village chief's house, it will be troublesome. Yunshang walked down the mountain. At this time the sky darkened. Yunshang looked up at the sky and saw a colorful red cloud floating in the sky. That red cloud was entrenched in the Thousand Beasts tomb area and refused to disperse for a long time. The sky seemed to be collapsing as the clouds kept rolling in the sky. Like a storm on the surface of the sea, the air became very oppressive. It was a kind of oppressive feeling before a summer storm. Could it be that the weather was changing? Yunshang could not help but quicken her pace. The sky was getting darker and darker, and it was dusky in front of her. Even with the Shen-Nong pupil in the minute subtlety realm, Yunshang could only barely see the road ahead. A black shadow appeared on the sun. The shadow expanded bit by bit, as if something was swallowing the sun. Just as the sun was being swallowed, the red cloud in the sky strangely moved towards the horizon, as if it was hiding from something. In Banana Leaf Village, when the villagers saw such a phenomenon, they were so scared that they all hid in their homes. The heavenly dog swallows the sun. It's the heavenly dog swallowing the sun. Quickly hide. If you are discovered by the heavenly dog, you will be eaten. In Banana Leaf Village, every family hid in their houses. Yunshang walked in the mountains. She also witnessed the strange scene of the heavenly dog swallowing the sun. It was just a total solar eclipse. Yunshang, who had modern scientific knowledge, did not panic when she saw this scene. She could barely recognize the road and jogged down the mountain. Suddenly, she staggered as if she had stepped on a stumbling tree root. Yunshang rolled down the mountain with her medicine basket. She deviated from the mountain path and rolled all the way. She did not know which corner of the mountain she landed in, but she heard a loud bang. Yunshang's head hit something hard. After a moment of dizziness, Yunshang opened her eyes again. When she saw her surroundings clearly, she realized that there was a sparkling light in front of her. This is moonlight grass. Not far away, a patch of tender grass that was as soft as moonlight emitted a firefly light in the darkness. This patch of moonlight grass was growing on a raised slope. The shape of a tomb could be faintly seen on the slope. Yunshang's head hit the tombstone of an unknown tomb. The entire tombstone was cracked. A trace of blood appeared on Yunshang's head. This must be the nameless tribe's beast tomb. The beast tomb was desolate, as if no one had been here for a long time. Yunshang was a doctor in her previous life. She had dealt with the dead countless times, so she did not avoid tombs. No wonder the villagers had never found moonlight grass in the mountains. The moonlight grass would only show its appearance at night when there was no light. With moonlight grass it could improve one's magical constitution. Yunshang was secretly delighted. With the protection of the Shen-Nong medical bracelet, she did not have to worry about the wound on her forehead. She carelessly touched it with her hand. After confirming that it was fine, she began to collect mature moonlight grass and moonlight grass seedlings. She only stopped when she had collected most of the moonlight grass in this area, and filled her medicine basket. At this time the dark clouds in the sky gradually dispersed. The Tengu sun swallowing celestial phenomenon ended. The sun appeared in the sky again. Yunshang noticed that the beast language ring on her hand was also stained with blood. It must have been stained when she tested the blood on her forehead. Why is the mud on the ring suddenly clean? Is this a totem? Yunshang looked at the ring on her hand in astonishment. The color of the ring was simple and unadorned. It was very clean. There was a carving of a beast's head on it, but she could not see what kind of beast it was. Whatever, let's go down the mountain first. Yunshang's harvest today was not small. She happily went down the mountain. Not long after Yunshang left, the tombstone in front of the nameless beast tomb on the slope of the graveyard where she had collected moonlight grass earlier collapsed with a loud bang. From the slope of the graveyard, there was a weak roar. A small black shadow swayed and struggled to climb out of the beast tomb. Chapter 10. After coming down from the Thousand Beasts tomb, Yunshang returned home. After the Tianguo eclipse, the sun was even more dazzling than usual. The villagers who were hiding in their houses walked out of their houses, and the village regained its former tranquility. Yun Songhai was not at home. He must be at the pub at the entrance of the village again. Yun Shang changed out of her clothes that were torn by the tree branches. The small wound on her hand had already healed. The beast language ring was still on her finger. However, due to the blood, the color of the ring had changed to a dark red. Yun Shang did not mind. She took out a thick pharmacopoeia that was hidden in a wooden box under the bed at home, and tried to find information about the moonlight grass. The pharmacopoeia that the Yun family kept was much bigger than the average pharmacopoeia. It was thick but not heavy, and it gave off an ancient vibe. The pharmacopoeia had close to 1,000 pages. It was unknown what material it was made of, but it was well preserved. Yun Shang was sure that even the pharmacopoeia in the Temple of Banana Leaf Village could not be compared to the one at home. According to what Yun Shang knew, Yun Songhai was not familiar with medicine. She guessed that this pharmacopoeia was left behind by his mother who passed away early. For some reason, Yun Songhai did not mention his late wife often. This pharmacopoeia had long been covered in dust. The medical system of the Boundless Land was very complicated. It was divided into two major categories: ancient medicine and magical treatment. Magical treatment was related to magic. It was rumored that only the great magicians of the Temple of Magic at the town level and above knew how to use it. It was known as sacred magic. Only the royals and nobles, as well as the disciples of some sects and aristocratic families, as well as some talented geniuses, had the opportunity to learn it. Yun Shang could not feel the magical elements, and as a commoner she could not come into contact with magical treatment. Fortunately, she had a good foundation of medical knowledge from her previous life. Even if she could not learn magical treatment, she could still learn ancient medicine. Ancient medicine was divided into two categories. One was basic herbalism and the other was medicine refining. The pharmacopoeia in the Yun family was a pharmacopoeia that recorded a large number of basic herbs. The compendium of 10,000 herbs was similar to a traditional Chinese herbal medicine compendium. It mainly introduced various common and rare herbs, and also described the names, characteristics, effects, and appearances of various herbs. When she was 2 or 3 years old, she had already familiarized herself with the language of the boundless world and started to dabble in basic herbology. After flipping through more than 10 pages, she found a record of moonlight grass. Moonlight grass. It's non-toxic and has a pungent taste. Its appearance is no different from ordinary grass. It's a type of herb that's beneficial to the cultivation of magic. It grows in damp places with dense qi and can be eaten raw. Its leaves can also be dried and made into moonlight grass tea. The effect is also very good. After Yun Shang looked at it, she took out several moonlight grass that she had picked. Under the sunlight, the moonlight grass was transparent. Yun Shang swallowed a green leaf and felt as if a mouthful of chilly water had been poured into her throat. It was very spicy. She sat down cross-legged and began to meditate according to the teachings of the Jiaoya Temple. Meditation was the most common method, used by magicians in the Boundless Land to accumulate magical elements. Ever since she was 3 years old and participated in her first magic initiation, she was like the other children in Jiaoya village and learned the way of meditation. For most children, due to their young age, they needed to rely on magic crystals to concentrate their mental strength and enter a state of meditation. However, Yun Shang was an exception. She had only participated in one magic initiation and had already learned the way of meditation. Her meditation time was several times faster than ordinary people. She did not need to rely on magic crystals to enter a state of meditation. Yun Shang attributed the specific reason to her need to maintain a high level of concentration as a doctor in her previous life. In the Yun family's small straw hut, Yun Shang sat alone on the bed. The bright sunlight outside the window and the chirping of the birds had all disappeared. It was as if she was in a pitch-black place. Yun Shang meditated while recalling the concepts of magic that Grandpa Village Chief had told her. There were 4 natural elements in the continent: wind, earth, water, and fire. They corresponded to the 4 colors: green, yellow, blue, and red. Depending on one's meditation state and elemental affinity, the natural elements one could perceive would be different as well. Generally speaking, The perception of magic elements was related to a person's personality. For example, people with a fiery temper had the best ability to capture the red fire element. People with a flexible personality had a unique advantage in perceiving the blue water element. People who were fickle and sensitive could keenly sense the green wind element. People who were honest were born to be favored by the earth element. However, perception was not necessarily related to one's personality. In some cases, there would be exceptions. For example, Grandpa Village Chief could perceive the power of wind and water elements at the same time. In the past 3 years, Yun Sheng could only see pitch-black darkness. However, after eating the moonlight grass today, she noticed that there was a change in the darkness. Vaguely, there seemed to be countless light spots in the darkness. They were sparkling like stars. Those stars were increasing in number, and gradually occupied Yun Sheng's entire meditation space. Red like a burning cloud, jumped in Yun Sheng's meditation space. Grandpa Village Chief once said that the more elemental energy one had, the higher one's magical talent would be. From pitch-black darkness to a large amount of fire element, such a big change made the usually calm Yun Sheng ecstatic. Fire element was the fiercest among the 4 natural elements. At the same time, it was also the most aggressive. Yun Sheng still remembered that when she first came to the Boundless Land, her father Yun Songhai released a sea of fire. Perhaps it was because of her father that she inherited the magical physique of the fire element. After the ecstasy, Yun Sheng continued with the next step of meditation. Perceiving the magical elements was the first step. This meant that Yun Sheng had just become a magic apprentice. Just perceiving the magical elements was not enough to use magic. She had to condense the fire element into a magical flame seed and store it in her body. As long as she could store a magical element of one color in her body, she could be promoted from a magic apprentice to a mage and learn the most basic magic. She carefully used the power of meditation to guide the red magical elements and continuously condense them. Just as Yun Sheng successfully attracted a large amount of fire elemental magic, the red fire elemental magic suddenly disappeared. It was as if an invisible hand had swept away all the fire elemental magic. Yun Sheng's brain felt as if it was hit by a heavy hammer. Her consciousness instantly shattered like glass. Her small body shook violently, and her face instantly turned pale. She opened her eyes, which were filled with unwillingness and pain. Interrupted meditation. Failed. The most important step in the transition from a magic apprentice to a mage was the step of accumulating magical elements after perceiving the magical elements. She had failed. Yun Sheng did not understand where she went wrong. Why could she not accumulate the magical elements in her body? The side effects of interrupted meditation were terrifying. This meant that she would not be able to meditate a second time for the next day. She did not notice that just now, the beast's speech ring on her hand flashed red and then returned to its original color. With a heavy heart, Yun Sheng swallowed another moonlight grass. She washed the remaining moonlight grass and dried it. In the next few days, Yun Sheng took advantage of Yun Songhai's absence to meditate a few times. Every time she meditated, she could see more and more fire element. But without exception, all the magical elements would disappear at the last moment. A few days passed in the blink of an eye. Yun Sheng was still unable to accumulate magical elements, but the day of the herb gatherer selection at the Jiaoya Temple was approaching. Chapter 11. Banana Leaf Village was a small mountain village. News of the arrival of an archmagus in the village's temple had spread throughout the village a few days ago. Most of the villagers were herb farmers. To them, the temple was an unreachable existence. Banana Leaf Village was too small. The pharmacists who could prescribe medicine and treat illnesses were unwilling to stay. Thus, the sorcerers in the temple took on the role of basic healers. The previous mage who had been stationed at the Jiaoya Temple had no choice but to retire due to old age. The new great mage had taken over the Jiaoya Temple. On the day the archmagus arrived, he announced that he was recruiting a herb gatherer. Being a herb gatherer at the temple was a lucrative job. Not only would one be exposed to all kinds of herbs and even knowledge of medicine refinement, but they would also be able to serve the new archmagus. They would also be paid 20 copper coins, which was 2 silver coins per month. In the eyes of the simple villagers, if their own children were chosen, It would be a blessing to their ancestors. Although Grandpa Village Head had recommended Yun Sheng, he could not resist the enthusiasm of the villagers. All of them were racking their brains to send their children to the Dharma temple. In the end, the village head had no choice but to discuss with the temple and put up a notice to select a herb gatherer. It was posted under the notice board at the entrance of the village. The notice was as follows: the Banana Leaf Temple is recruiting a herb gatherer. The age range is from 6 to 13 years old. There are no restrictions on gender. The requirement is to have the ability to identify herbs and experience in picking herbs. Children who are interested in participating in the selection must gather outside the Banana Leaf Temple on the day of the assessment. They will be selected by the new Archmagus Yang. On the day of the assessment, Yun Sheng woke up early. After cooking breakfast, she walked over to Yun Songhai's bed. "Father, I'm going to the temple to participate in the selection of a herb gatherer today." Yun Sheng was hopeful. This herb gatherer assessment reminded her of the college entrance examination. It was very meaningful. Yun Songhai didn't seem to hear her and continued to sleep. Although Yun Sheng already knew that this would be the result, a trace of disappointment still flashed across her eyes. "Then Shenger will go first. I will definitely become a herbal gathering boy." Hearing Yun Sheng walk out quietly, the room regained its tranquility. Yun Songhai suddenly sat up, seeming to be deep in thought. Yun Sheng arrived in front of the Jiaoya temple. It was very lively at the moment, and the scene was not inferior to the annual Magic Enlightenment. Banana Leaf Village was a medium-sized village with more than 300 households. Today, at least 100 households had gathered in front of the temple. Some of them were here to watch the fun, while most of them had brought their own children to participate in the selection. The reason for this was the new archmage that had arrived in the temple. In the eyes of the villagers, who rarely left the village in their lifetime, the village chief and the old sorcerer in the temple were already very impressive. Now that an archmage had suddenly arrived, there were naturally many onlookers. But what surprised Yun Sheng was that there were many unfamiliar faces in the line. They were clearly people from the neighboring villages. Why were there outsiders here for the selection of herb gatherers in Banana Leaf Village? The people from the neighboring villages were actually from the Flaming Rock Village. The village chief had also noticed that there were outsiders participating in the selection. When he had put up the notice, he had accidentally forgotten to state that only villagers from the village could participate in the selection. Naturally, the selection of herb gatherers for the selection of herb gatherers in Banana Leaf Temple naturally had to be from the village. Not to mention, Flaming Rock Village was Banana Leaf Village's sworn enemy. Flaming Rock Village was adjacent to Banana Leaf Village, and both villages grew hemostatic flowers for a living. Unlike the simple Banana Leaf Village, Flaming Rock Village's people were valiant and unreasonable. The village chief of Flaming Rock Village was also a sorcerer who was proficient in fire magic. A few years ago, their village had produced a martial arts master who was equivalent to an archmage, so they were even more unbridled and fearless. In the medicine market, they often suppressed Banana Leaf Village's sales of medicinal herbs. "Everyone, the selection of Banana Leaf Village's temple is only open to the children of the village. Please leave." The village chief politely asked the children around the age of 10 to leave. One of the girls was about 7 or 8 years old. She looked quite clever. Beside her were a few other villagers from Flaming Rock Village. She was the granddaughter of the village chief of Flaming Rock Village, Ding Lei. "Your notice didn't state that you don't recruit people from other villages. The few of us left early in the morning and crossed 2 mountains before arriving at Banana Leaf Village. Now that you want to chase us away, we won't leave." Although Ding Lei was young, she had been pampered since she was young. Moreover, she was the daughter of the village chief of Flaming Rock Village, so she was even more fearless. What a joke. She had already asked around. This Archmage Yang of Banana Leaf Temple not only knew magic, but also all kinds of medicine. It was a pity that he had taken the initiative to come to Banana Leaf Village for some reason. Otherwise, she wouldn't have needed to bring a group of villagers to Banana Leaf Village. As soon as Ding Lei finished speaking, the villagers and children of Flaming Rock Village beside her started to clamor. Ding Lei took the opportunity to shout, "It must be because you Banana Leaf Village can't afford to lose. My family has been growing medicinal herbs for generations. I'm also a sorcerer's apprentice. If you want to chase me away, find someone to compete with me. If anyone is stronger than me, we will leave. Otherwise, no one can chase us away. Once they heard that Dinglei's family had been growing medicinal herbs for generations, and that she was a sorcerer's apprentice, the villagers of Banana Leaf Village immediately lost their anger. A sorcerer's apprentice who was proficient in medicinal herbs, and was only 7 or 8 years old. Even if the two villages added together, there wouldn't be a single child like this in 10 years. Furthermore, the village chief of Flaming Rock Village was famous for holding grudges. If they offended Dinglei, they would definitely suffer. As a result, no one dared to step forward. When the village chief saw this, he couldn't help but frown. What? No one dares to step forward and compete with me? Banana Leaf Village is only so. They are all cowards. I think there's no need to compete today. The title of herb gatherer belongs to me. Dinglei arrogantly looked around. Who says there's no one in Banana Leaf Village? It's just a competition of medicinal herbs. I'll compete with you. A crisp child's voice suddenly entered Dinglei's ears. A plainly dressed 6-year-old girl walked out of the crowd. She wasn't tall and had a delicate and pretty face. She had a pair of black eyes that made her look very lively. It was Yun Sheng. When the village chief saw this, his old face couldn't help but relax. He was really afraid that no one would dare to step forward and compete with Dinglei. You. Dinglei sized up the girl in front of her. She saw that she was younger than her and dressed shabbily, but her expression wasn't as timid as other children's. For a moment Dinglei couldn't tell who Yun Sheng was. A villager from Flaming Rock Village immediately leaned over and whispered a few words into Dinglei's ear. After hearing this, Dinglei's expression became arrogant. So it's the daughter of a fake sorcerer. A good-for-nothing who can't understand the magical elements. What right does she have to compete with me? Get lost. Today we are recruiting an herb gatherer, not a sorcerer's apprentice. A languid male voice came from the direction of the Dharma Temple. The villagers looked forward and saw that the doors of the Dharma Temple had already opened. A youth in black walked out. Chapter 12. The youth who had walked out of the temple had deep-set eyes and weak-colored skin. Just by standing there, he looked like a treasured sword ready to strike. His sharp edge made people retreat 3 feet away from him. It's him. Yun Sheng, on the other hand, had a bad feeling. She couldn't help but lower her body. How could she be so unlucky? Wasn't this young man from the temple the same one she had ambushed on the hill a few days ago? In order to avoid this person, Yun Sheng had not gone to the hill to practice martial arts. She had thought that he was just a passerby passing by the mountain village. Who would have thought that he was actually from the temple? Looking at his age and figure, he definitely wasn't the great magician Yang. Magicians were different from warriors. Most of them had average physiques and looked thin and weak. The youth was tall and straight like a green pine tree. That meant that the youth must be the great magician's disciple. However, based on his skills yesterday, he was clearly proficient in martial arts. Could it be that he practiced both magic and martial arts? Legend had it that there was a type of person on the mainland with enchanting talent. They were proficient in both martial arts and magic. This type of person was also known as someone who practiced both magic and martial arts. Yun Sheng wrinkled her delicate brows. She had accidentally offended a young genius who practiced both magic and martial arts. Perhaps he had already forgotten about her. Yun Sheng comforted herself. After all, he was blind and she had only spoken a few words to him. He couldn't have recognized her. However, when the youth walked out, his misty eyes didn't hesitate at all. It was as if he could see her. They passed through the crowd and landed directly on the petite figure. The corners of his mouth curled up, revealing a rather seductive and lazy smile. His expression clearly said, "Little wild cat, we meet again." You. Dinglei had never seen such an unrestrained youth. She felt suffocated and stuttered, unable to speak. "Oh, it's little brother Yi. Did the great magician Yang ask you to come out? Look, these outsiders also want to participate in the selection of herb gatherers. I was just about to send them away." Grandpa Village Chief had his own selfish motives. He knew that Yun Sheng knew all kinds of herbs, but Dinglei wasn't easy to bully. Her family had been medicine farmers for several generations, and her father was the first martial grandmaster in Cinderclast Village 10 years ago. Because of this, the Ding family had even moved out of Fire Cliff Village and opened a medium-sized pharmacy in town. Yun Sheng was very smart, but she had never systematically studied herbs, so her chances of winning were not high. Let me say something fair. As I said just now, the Banana Leaf Temple is very fair in recruiting herb gatherers. It doesn't require them to know magic, but it also doesn't stipulate that they have to be from Banana Leaf Village. The young man's gaze never left Yun Sheng. The young man had heard everything that had happened outside the temple. He did not want to meddle in other people's business and was about to leave the temple to wait for the little wild cat, when he heard the voice that made his heart itch. Out of his 5 senses, other than his eyesight, his other 4 senses were different from ordinary people. Although Yun Sheng had only spoken a few words to him, he had engraved her aura and voice into his heart. That damned blind man, he did it on purpose. Yun Sheng pursed her lips. Just now, the young man had winked at her. She really did not understand how a blind man could make a blinking motion so seductive. The bystanders did not notice the small movements between the two. The village head's face was full of embarrassment. This young man surnamed Yi had come to Banana Leaf Village with great magician Yang. His identity was very mysterious. He was not great magician Yang's disciple, but he was also an illegal temple member. He had a cold temperament, and the village head had met him a few times, but he had never spoken before. He did not expect him to take the initiative to stand up today. Hearing this handsome young man speak up for her, Ding Lei was delighted. She became even more fearless. How about it, little trash? Do you dare to compete with me? If you win, I'll give you 5 silver coins. I don't think you've ever seen so much money in your life, right? Let's compete. But other than the copper coins, I want to add another condition. If you lose, you have to crawl back to Firerock Village from here. Yun Sheng's gaze suddenly changed. If people did not offend her, she would not offend them. If people offended her, she would return the favor tenfold. This Ding Lei was arrogant. Just now, she had laughed at her Banana Leaf Village and mocked the village head's grandfather. As a member of Banana Leaf Village, she had to teach her a lesson. You don't know the difference between life and death. I will compete with you. But looking at your appearance, I don't know if you can take out 5 silver coins. Ding Lei did not put Yun Sheng in her eyes at all. 5 silver coins were equivalent to 50 copper coins. This amount was equivalent to 5 transactions of hemostasis flowers. For any household in Banana Leaf Village, this was not a small amount. Xiaosheng, don't be angry. Your family doesn't have that many copper coins. The village head's grandfather was also worried. The bet of 5 silver coins was too big. I don't have that many copper coins, but I can use it as a bargaining chip. Village head grandpa, help me take a look. Is this moonlight grass worth 5 silver coins? Yun Sheng took out a small bag of herbs from her little pouch. These moonlight grass were left behind after she had dried them in the sun. The amount of moonlight grass she had picked back was sufficient. After her processing, the quality was absolutely top quality. This is moonlight grass? Wild moonlight grass. The village head's grandfather checked Yun Sheng's bag of herbs and couldn't help but change his expression. Wild moonlight grass was basically exclusively sold on the market. 1 stalk of moonlight grass was worth 1 silver coin. In Yun Sheng's bag of herbs there were at least 10 stalks which were worth nearly 10 silver coins. Since both sides have come to an agreement, the herb gathering boy selection for the Jiaoyi Temple will officially begin. The 2 of you, as well as the village chief, will follow me into the temple. When the youth with the surname Yi heard the 2 people's bet, he did not reveal anything and led them inside. The onlookers were all blocked outside the temple. Yun Sheng, Ding Lei, and the village head entered the temple together. The temple in Banana Leaf Village was the most spacious house in the entire village. It was made up of 5 or 6 tiled houses in picturesque disorder. Yun Sheng didn't come to the temple often. She had only come 3 times to participate in the magic enlightenment. Moreover, she had gone directly to the main hall of the temple. Today, Youth Yi led them directly through the main hall and walked to the back of the temple. At the door of the back of the temple stood a middle-aged man. The man was about 50 years old. His body was thin, his nose was like an eagle's hook, and his skin was yellow. He wore a long greenish-gray robe. From afar he looked like an old tree stump. Master Yang. When the village head saw the middle-aged man, he bowed respectfully. In the boundless land, the strong were respected. Although the village head was old, he was only a sorcerer. Compared to an archmage, he was one level lower. Yun Shang noticed that this middle-aged archmage's eyes were gloomy, and he exuded a gloomy aura. He glanced at the two children indifferently and said unhappily, "Why are there only two of you?" What he needed were clever and nimble young children. At first glance, he could tell that these two children had ordinary talent, especially the younger one, who was extremely thin and weak. He didn't even have a bit of magic power around him. A lousy village was indeed a lousy village. They couldn't even find a decent herb-gathering boy. These two children were elected by the village. They are the most outstanding candidates. When the village head saw this, he hurriedly tried to smooth things over. Whether they are outstanding or not, we will only know after the assessment. Have the two of you read the Chi People's Medicine Encyclopedia? Archmage Yang could only choose the tallest of the shorties. He took out a medicine encyclopedia and placed it in front of the two of them. Chapter 13. Ding Lei's face lit up at the sight of the Chi People Medicinal Codex, while the village chief's old face was filled with anxiety. The Chi People Medicinal Codex was the most widely circulated herbal classic in the boundless land, and it was only sold in first-grade pharmacies in cities. In a small place like Banana Leaf Village, one might not even find a copy of it other than the Dharma Temple. Ever since Yun Shang came to the boundless land, she had never left Banana Leaf Village and had never undergone formal medical training, let alone familiarize herself with the Chi People Medicinal Codex. Ding Lei from Rock Village was different. Coincidentally, she had a copy of the Chi People Medicinal Codex at home. Great Magician Yang took in the changes in the two children's expressions and cast a sidelong glance at Yun Shang. "Why? You haven't even read the Chi People Medicinal Codex? Then you don't have to take the test. I don't accept blind people here." "Did you hear that? The Great Magician is asking you to leave. You haven't even read the Chi People Medicinal Codex, yet you still want to be a herbalist. Don't you think so, Big Brother Yi?" Ding Lei was pleased with herself and even intimately expressed her goodwill to the youth surnamed Yi. The youth surnamed Yi was also somewhat astonished. He had not expected that Yun Shang would participate in the herbalist test without even reading the basic herbal classic. "I'm not blind. It's just the Chi People Medicinal Codex. Give me 15 minutes. Yun Shang returned to normal after being astonished for a moment. She did not fear Great Magician Yang's cold gaze and directly took the Chi People Medicinal Codex. The Chi People Medicinal Codex was much thinner than the Yun family's Medicinal Codex, but it still had a few hundred pages. Everyone, including the youth surnamed Yi, did not know what Yun Shang was going to do next. Yun Shang took the Medicinal Codex and lowered her eyelashes. Her slender fingers flipped through the pages of the Medicinal Codex, and her pink lips moved slightly. Her movements were not fast at first, but towards the end, her chanting became faster and faster, and the pages between her fingers flipped even faster. Only then did everyone understand that she was going to read the entire Chi People Medicinal Codex in 15 minutes. "It's useless even if you read it. You're just cramming at the last minute. You still want to compete with me? Dream on," Ding Lei said disdainfully. It was already difficult for a 6-year-old child who had not received any systematic medical training to understand the pharmacopoeia, let alone memorizing the Chi People's pharmacopoeia in 15 minutes. Just as he was thinking, Yun Shang finished reading the medicine encyclopedia. "Great Magician Yang, please take the examination. I'm already prepared." Great Magus Yang's eyes flickered. Yun Shang's confident tone was convincing. "Yin Ying Tung. Valiant Cloud Vine. A herbaceous herb with purple leaves and a height of 3 inches. Sweet and cold in nature, it can cure deafness and improve eyesight. Taking it all year round can prolong one's life," Ding Lei hurriedly said. Then she glanced at Yun Shang proudly. "You've forgotten its habits. It likes the sun and is wet. It mostly grows in river valleys near water," Yun Shang added lightly. When Great Magus Yang heard this, he looked at the medicine encyclopedia again. Sure enough, there was a line recorded at the bottom of the heroic cloud vine's information. She had also noticed such an inconspicuous corner. Great Magus Yang asked about a few more herbs. Every time Ding Lei rushed to answer, Yunshang didn't say much, but she would fill in one or two sentences that Ding Lei had missed. As she answered, her words were clear and unhurried. She didn't sound like a child at all. This surprised great Magus Yang. On the side, the youth surnamed Yi couldn't help but raise the corners of his mouth. This little wildcat really did have some skills. At the end of the examination, great Magus Yang closed the medicine encyclopedia and said in a low voice, "Page 109 of the Qi People Medicine Encyclopedia." Ding Lei was startled. She hadn't thought that great Magus Yang would suddenly change the examination method. Although she had studied the Qi People Medicine Encyclopedia, she was far from being able to recite it backwards. However, she wasn't worried. She didn't believe that Yunshang would be able to recite it. Blood rhinoceros stone, a medicinal crystal. Its appearance is like a hexagonal diamond. There are traces of blood on the surface of the stone. It's mostly collected from the sea. When refining this stone, it needs to be placed in a smokeless furnace and heated until it turns red. Take it out and make it into powder before consumption. It can absorb qi to reduce phlegm, stop bleeding and heal sores. Yunshang's voice was like a silver bell. As soon as she finished speaking, a trace of admiration surged onto great Magus Yang's withered face. He opened the Qi People Medicine Encyclopedia and didn't miss a single word. It really didn't miss a single word. Ding Lei's face twisted. How is this possible? This is impossible. Why you cheated? You can't know the contents of that page. Page 10 of the Qi People Medicine Encyclopedia, page 240 of the turtle saliva grass, page 321 of the Dendrobium serpentis. Do you still need me to continue reciting it? Ding Lei, remember your promise. Crawl out on your knees. At that moment, two small dimples appeared on Yunshang's delicate face. The types of herbs in the Qi People Medicine Encyclopedia were much fewer than in the Yun family's medicine encyclopedia. On the basis of the compendium of 10,000 herbs, she could even recite the entire Qi People Medicine Encyclopedia backwards. The youth surnamed Yi on the side raised his eyebrows beautifully. It was as if he could already see the devilish smile on Yunshang's face. You. Ding Lei's face was red. If she had to crawl out of Banana Leaf Village, not only would she lose her face, it would also affect the reputation of the entire Fire Cliff Village. She definitely couldn't let this little good-for-nothing be so proud of herself. A flame suddenly appeared in her hand. The flame burned brightly as it rushed towards Yunshang's small body. The people present didn't expect that a magic apprentice would be able to use fire magic in an instant without chanting. It was Yunshang's first time fighting against a magician. Even though the other party was only a magic apprentice, his magic was ever-changing and there was almost no pattern to it. Just as the flame was about to burst forth, Yunshang's body felt light as a pair of strong arms picked her up. Remember, you owe me one. The youth surnamed Ye's somewhat languid voice softly fell into her ears. Yunshang only saw the beautiful curve of his face. The youth's lips barely moved. His hazy eyes flickered. The flame that was rushing towards the two of them stopped in midair. A wisp of fire element expanded and turned into a ferocious fire wolf. The fire wolf's body was huge and its red eyes were filled with murderous intent. It drew a sea of fire in the air and swallowed the flame released by Ding Lei. Then it turned around and pounced on Ding Lei. This was magical imitation, a mid-level fire magic. The village chief's mouth was agape. This youth actually didn't use a magic staff or chanting a spell. He just directly cast a mid-level spell. No! Ding Lei cried out miserably. The flame sprang up and surrounded her body. The village chief only then reacted. Ding Lei couldn't die. He took out his magic staff and waved it. On the magic staff, there were two alternating blue and green magic soul stones. The blue one emitted a dazzling light. A cloud of water vapor dispersed and extinguished the fire on Ding Lei's body. However, the fire wolf had already burned Ding Lei beyond recognition. Her body was covered in wounds. A cracked low-level magic artifact fell out of her body. Ding Lei had also come prepared this time. She had brought along a magic tool that could store a magic attack. How could he cause such damage in an instant? Was this magic? Yunshang's heart turned cold as she looked at Ding Lei, who was suffering from burns all over her body. Yunshang didn't sympathize with her, but she wasn't grateful to the youth either. She tried to break free from the youth's arms. However, the youth's arms were as firm as a mountain. He didn't have any intention of letting go of her. Under the medical conditions of the boundless land, if Ding Lei's extensive burns weren't treated properly, only death awaited her. Remember, little wild cat. When facing an enemy, it's foolish to underestimate them. The youth's words were as bone-chilling as ice as he reminded Yun Shang. The strong lived and the weak died. However, in the next moment, his lips curled into a bewitching smile. Welcome to Jiaoya Temple. Little wild cat, remember my name, Yi Baiming. Chapter 14. When she came out of the temple, Yun Shang already had 5 brand new silver coins and a set of herb-gatherer robes on her. Ding Lei's burns were very serious. When the people of Flaming Rock Village found out that it was the people of Jiaoya Temple who did it, they didn't dare to do anything and could only take Ding Lei away. What happened in the temple was kept a secret by the village chief. However, the villagers all knew that the little trash of Jiaoya Village, Yun Shang, had defeated Ding Lei of Flaming Rock Village. The villagers looked at Yun Shang in a different light. Under everyone's gaze, Yun Shang calmly left the temple. In her mind, the appearance of the magic fire wolf was still flashing. Unlike the gentle water magic and ethereal wind magic of Grandpa Village Chief, fire magic was indeed the most dazzling and the most powerful of the 4 types of magic. Even though Yun Shang had inherited her family's secret technique, magic was still difficult to defend against. However, why was she still unable to condense magic elements after consuming the moonlight grass? This made Yun Shang feel very helpless. In front of her, there was a commotion of children. What kind of monster is this? Throw stones and smash it to death. A few 3 to 4-year-old children gathered together. Surrounded by the children was an unknown small beast. Its entire body was black, and it was impossible to tell what species it was. The reason why the children called it a monster was because it had 2 heads. One of its heads was already deformed by the children throwing stones at it. The other head was also badly mutilated and one could vaguely see the skull. A deformed cub was indeed a monster in the eyes of the children. There were a few barren mountains near Jiaoya Village. There were some unknown wild beasts living on them. Perhaps this cub escaped from the mountains. From a doctor's point of view, Yun Shang knew that the cub was deformed and malnourished. Coupled with the hunger and cold, it didn't have long to live. If they were in the modern era, this cub might be able to use advanced medical equipment to undergo a separation operation. Unfortunately, the current environment was too crude. Just as Yun Shang was about to walk away, her body suddenly shook as if she had bumped into an invisible wall. She felt a strange fluctuation of emotions, as if someone was whispering something into her ear. Yun Shang looked over again and her gaze collided with the little beast. The little beast's light brown eyes were filled with pain. That pained expression was not something a wild beast should have, but more like a child's. Stop, don't bully it. Yun Shang didn't hesitate. She walked up and chased the children away. When she approached the cub, Yun Shang found that even though it was seriously injured, it still stood up shakily the moment she approached it. All the dirty fur on its body stood up, and it roared defensively at Yun Shang. Most wild beasts were hostile to humans, not to mention a cub that had just been bullied. I won't hurt you. Don't be nervous. Yun Shang knew that a dying beast was the most dangerous. As she spoke, she slowly approached the 2-headed beast. The latter seemed to be thinking about Yun Shang's words, and there was a trace of confusion in its eyes. Just as the 2-headed beast was thinking, Yun Shang raised her hand, and a needle filled with anesthetic silently pierced through the air and pierced the cub's back. The cub swayed and fell to the ground. Yun Shang carried the 2-headed beast and ran home as fast as she could. On a mountain road outside Banana Leaf Village, a few villagers from Flaming Rock Village were pushing a wheelbarrow. On the wheelbarrow was Ding Lei, whose entire body was wrapped in gauze. Yi Baiming's fire magic was very overbearing. Fortunately, the village chief had acted in time, and Great Magician Yang didn't want the villagers from Flaming Rock Village to pick a fight, so he simply treated Ding Lei. Ding Lei's life was saved, but her face and skin were all burned. There was no way she could recover her original appearance in this lifetime. Lei, don't be sad. When we get back to the village, we'll ask the village chief to come forward and work with the pharmacies in the city to reject Banana Leaf Village's hemostatic flower. Let's see how they survive. One of the villagers said hatefully. There's also that Yun Sheng. She colluded with that young man from the Dharma temple to harm me. I must take revenge. I want to kill her. Ding Lei's ugly face was contorted. She was filled with hatred. If it weren't for her, she would have been the herbal-gathering boy. Lele, don't worry. The village chief will help you take revenge. A few of the villagers agreed. You won't be able to take revenge. A person stood at the intersection in front of them. The person was tall and had the smell of bad wine on him. Who are you? What right do you have to say that I won't be able to take revenge? Ding Lei endured the pain and sat up, glaring angrily at the drunkard blocking her way. You bullied the young, and the old couldn't stand it, so I came to stand up for you. The man's breath reeked of alcohol. As he spoke, a walking stick with 5 soul stones on it slid out of his sleeve. No one could bully Sheng. In an instant the wind and clouds surged in the sky, and the ground strangely burned. Countless tongues of fire were like evil spirits from hell, gathering together and penetrating everywhere. The phantom ghostfire, which could even devour souls, was the most mysterious forbidden fire-type magic on the continent. Sky magic. Before the apprentice Ding Lei could finish her sentence, she had already turned into charcoal. This fire was even more powerful than the mid-level fire-type magic that Yi Baiming had released earlier. The fire was extinguished, and only a few human-shaped ashes were left on the ground. A gust of wind blew, and the ashes drifted away. Cough cough. The drunkard Yun Songhai kept the magic bone staff in his sleeve and coughed violently. He laughed bitterly and mocked himself. My magic only has this much power left. Soon, I'm afraid that even alcohol won't be able to suppress the blood curse in my body. With my magic power, I'm afraid this place is no longer safe. Do I have to send Shun'er back to that place? It's just that I don't have the face to go back there. He hunched his back like an old man in his twilight years and walked in the direction of Banana Leaf Village. It was close to evening, and the twilight pulled his tall and thin figure into a long oblique shadow, making him look especially bleak. At this time, Yun Sheng had already settled the 2-headed beast in her home. The 2-headed beast in her arms had already fallen asleep under the influence of the anesthetic. While the 2-headed beast was asleep, Yun Sheng had already purchased some things needed for the operation. Fortunately, she had just made a small fortune, which was just enough to buy groceries. Due to the limited conditions, she could only temporarily transform her simple bed into a simple operating table. She bought a new oil lamp from the village's grocery store, the inferior wine that Yun Songhai had left behind, clean linen gauze, new cotton, a few beast tendons of suitable size, the scalpel that she had just bought, and a few bone needles of different diameters. She hung the thin mattress on the window to block out the situation in the room. After everything was prepared, the things needed for the operation were considered ready. Yun Sheng changed into a clean herbalist's uniform and used it as a white coat. When she washed her hands with the inferior wine, she wanted to take off the orc language ring. Who knew that after trying a few times she could not take off the ring? In desperation, Yun Sheng could only wear the ring and directly perform the operation. Chapter 15. Yun Sheng scraped off the dirty fur of the 2-headed beast and saw its true appearance. It was a 2-headed hound. Canine magical beasts were not rare, but this 2-headed hound seemed to be different from ordinary canines. Now was not the time to guess what breed this 2-headed hound was. Yun Sheng collected her thoughts. At the same time, she realized that the difficulty of her first operation in the Boundless Land was not small. There were no modern medical equipment, no assistance, and no measures to stop the bleeding after the operation. However, she did not lose confidence. At least, the 2-headed hound in front of her was not in the worst condition. When the 2-headed hound was in its mother's womb, it was not fully developed. Fortunately, its heart and other organs were well developed. This undoubtedly increased the chances of the 2-headed hound surviving. The only problem was that the left side of the 2-headed hound's head was completely necrotic and had to be removed. Even if it was successfully removed, its head would be a little crooked in the future. The biggest difficulty of the operation was that the left and right sides of the 2-headed hound's head were connected. To remove the left side of the head, it was very likely to damage the main artery in its neck. If it was in modern times, the bleeding could still be done through blood transfusion. However, in the boundless land, where could she find a blood source and blood transfusion equipment? In addition, her Shinong pupil had only broken through the first level. She could only see the blood vessels on the surface of the muscle, but not the small nerves deep in the muscle. The only thing she could do now was to give it a try. Yunsheng calculated the time. She could not delay any longer. Otherwise, once the anesthetic wore off, the two-headed hound's situation would be even more dangerous. She decisively cut open the fur on the two-headed hound's neck. The sharp scalpel had just touched the surface of the skin when it quickly cut open a wound like cutting cloth. The scalpel nimbly bypassed the numerous nerves, the bright red veins, and the lymphatic tissue. Under the oil lamp, Yunsheng's movements were very smooth. It did not look like she was performing a life-or-death operation at all. Instead, she looked more like a pianist playing freely on a stage. The first level of trillium hand and Shinong pupil were used to the extreme by Yunsheng. She found the connecting cartilage of the two-headed hound's left head. After removing the necrotic muscles, all that was left was to remove the extra deformed dog head. Yunsheng's scalpel cut through the last layer of soft membrane. Suddenly, she slit a hidden blood vessel with the scalpel. Blood instantly gushed out. Yunsheng did not stop there. She took out the thinnest bone needle and quickly pierced the surrounding area. Miraculously, the bleeding stopped. After stopping the bleeding, Yunsheng was still very nervous. The soul-healing needle could only stop the bleeding for a while. She had to complete the operation. After the removal was successful, he used the prepared beast bone needles and beast tendons to stitch them up. After a perfect Yunsheng's surgical knot was tied, Yunsheng felt weak all over. It was as if all the strength in her body had been sucked out in an instant. She leaned against the bed. When it came to performing surgeries, the chief surgeon's psychological and physical qualities were extremely demanding. Although Yunsheng was well versed in both Chinese and Western medicine in her previous life, she had participated in the medical activities of the United Nations as a Red Cross doctor. Under the extreme conditions of the boundless world, it was easy to imagine the pressure on the body of a 6-year-old girl to complete an extremely simple operation that required a combination of Eastern and Western medicine. Yunsheng placed her hand gently on the two-headed hound's chest. After the operation, the two-headed hound's heart was beating vigorously. 2 small dimples appeared on Yunsheng's face again. She dragged her tired body and tidied up the surgical equipment in the room. After that, she carried the two-headed hound to the storeroom behind the house and made a hay nest for it. Her father Yun Songhai did not like animals. Yunsheng wanted to wait until the two-headed hound recovered slightly before releasing it. When Yun Songhai returned home, he could not find his daughter, Yunsheng's petite figure, in the house. Only the sound of boiling water came from the kitchen. When he walked to the kitchen to take a look, Yun Songhai could not help but stare blankly. The porridge pot in the kitchen was open, and the rice grains in the pot were constantly rolling. His daughter Yunsheng was lying on the dining table, sleeping soundly. She was still wearing a brand new short herb-gathering robe. "Father, I will definitely become a herb-gathering boy." His daughter's childish words when she left home in the morning were still ringing in his ears. A crack appeared on Yun Songhai's calm face. He walked forward and picked up his daughter's small body, the rims of his eyes slightly hot. Yunsheng was indeed tired. She accidentally fell asleep while cooking. This sleep, however, was a deep sleep. In a daze, Yunsheng only felt that she was in a warm and humid place. A gentle female voice whispered in her ear, "Sure, do you blame mother? Mother?" Yunsheng's consciousness surged like a tide, and she quickly woke up. She found that her body had become small, and her hands and feet were curled up. She was clearly still in the appearance of a baby. Her body was surrounded by warm amniotic fluid. This was the situation before Yunsheng was born. A woman with an unbelievably beautiful face sat on the bed with difficulty. Large beads of sweat continuously hung from her forehead. The woman was in a simple and crude house. She was about to give birth, and her husband, Yun Songhai, was sent by her to find a midwife. The woman was still wearing a ring on her hand. She gently stroked her belly. Yunsheng was certain that this beautiful woman was her mother who had lived a short life. "Although you have not been born yet, Mother knows that you must have inherited my talent. It's not that Mother is cruel, But they are too strong before you have the ability to protect yourself, the woman muttered. She hesitated for a moment, and then she put her hand on her bulging belly. Mother can only keep it in the beast language ring. One day when your own ability awakens you can wake it up. Yun Sheng, promise Mother that you must live on strong and protect your father. I caused him to be unable to return home, and he became an unfilial son that everyone spurned. I owe him too much. After the beautiful woman finished speaking, she left a seal on the ring. After a while, the beast language ring returned to its original state. After the beautiful woman used her magic, her fetus was affected. She was sweating profusely, and the space between her legs was wet. At this time there was a clamor outside the house. Hu Jiusheng, so you were hiding here? The beautiful woman sneered. She took out a bone staff and quickly chanted. With a loud bang the house exploded. The moment the house exploded, Yun Sheng woke up with a start from her dream. The sky was already bright. Yun Sheng wiped her forehead and found that she was covered in cold sweat. She lowered her head and looked at the beast language ring on her hand. The originally dim beast language ring was shining brightly. Chapter 16. The seal on the beast language ring was lifted. Although she didn't know the reason why the beast language ring that had been sealed for many years suddenly unsealed itself, a brand new concept appeared in her mind the moment Yun Sheng unsealed it. That was a beast summoner. It turned out that on the continent, there weren't only two powerful professions, magicians and warriors. Above these two professions, there was a profession that both magicians and warriors kept a secret, and that was a summoner. A summoner was a person who could contract a beast and make it a beast companion. A summoner must be a magician, but not all magicians could become a summoner. According to Hu Jiusheng's memories on the continent, the ratio of magicians to summoners was an astonishing 1 in 100,000. On the boundless continent, summoners were already rare. In Zhou State, where Banana Leaf Village was located, the number of summoners could be counted on one hand. It was also because of this that the appearance of a new summoner was a huge fortune for any country. Yun Sheng's mother was at least a scepter summoner, but due to some unknown reasons, she wasn't accepted by the summoners, this group of powerful summoners, and was constantly being hunted down. Even Yun Songhai was not accepted by the world. In order to protect her daughter who was about to be born, Hu Jiusheng left behind this beast language ring. Only when Yun Sheng's ability awoke one day, would the seal be unsealed. The unsealing of the seal meant that the beast language ring's function had been reactivated. The beast language ring was a special tool that Hu Jiusheng used to seal Yun Sheng's ability. At the same time it was also a storage ring. Inside it was some information related to summoners that Hu Jiusheng had left behind. The method to make the beast language ring recognize its owner was to drip blood. Previously, Yun Sheng had unintentionally stained the beast language ring with her blood, and the ring had automatically recognized its owner. Yun Sheng was a natural beast language master, but previously, this part of her talent was sealed in the beast language ring. With the removal of the seal on the ring, Yun Sheng could feel the emotional fluctuations of the magical beasts. She could even understand the language of the magical beasts. Especially when facing a high-level magical beast, the effect was even more obvious. In the past 6 years, Yun Sheng's ability had not been awakened. It was only recently that she was able to sense the emotional fluctuations of demons. It seemed that the reason she sensed the two-headed hound's emotional fluctuations for no reason was due to the awakening of her beast speaker ability. As long as a beast speaker reached a certain level of cultivation, they would be able to draw a summoning magic circle and summon beginner-level beasts. Yun Sheng was eager to give it a try. She immediately drew a basic magic array according to the information left in the ring. Drawing a basic summoning magic array was not difficult. After Yun Sheng finished, she stood within the magic array. She was really looking forward to what kind of beast her first beast would be. When the psychic power passed through the magic array and spread out, the summoning waves spread out within a radius of dozens of miles. In the mountains near Banana Leaf Village, the low-level magical beasts became restless. Yun Songhai was not at home. In the corner of the utility room, the little puppy, who was still under the effects of the anesthetic, felt the magic summoning power. Although it was weak, it was very alert. Its head, which was still drooping, immediately lifted up. Its light brown eyes showed a trace of alertness. Yun Sheng felt a strange magic fluctuation. It's a success. Yun Sheng looked down and was stunned. She saw an egg jump out of the magic array. It was an egg with 2 wings. It was about the size of a chicken egg and the egg was pink in color. Pop pop. My dear little master, your ability has finally awakened. The egg had not seen the light of day for a long time. When it was summoned today, it jumped up and down excitedly, rolling around in the room. Chicken. Egg. Yun Sheng was stunned. She did not expect her first beast to be an egg. Pop Pop, it's not an egg. Have you seen an egg with wings? Pop Pop just hasn't hatched yet. After hatching, Pop Pop is loved by people. Beasts run away when they see it. The winged egg wandered around Yun Sheng. It turned out to be a magical beast egg. It hasn't hatched yet. Yun Sheng breathed a sigh of relief. She heard that beast summoners were all awesome. They had all kinds of cool beasts. A beast summoner with an egg, just thinking about it was too horrible to look at. So Pop Pop. Seeing that the magical beast egg kept popping, Yun Sheng simply called it Pop Pop. How long will it take for you to hatch? Also, do you know any combat skills or magic? In the information that Hu Jiuxing left for Yun Sheng, it was written that all magical beasts, even if it was a level 1 magical beast, had combat skills or magic. She just didn't know whether her magical beast was a magic beast or a combat beast. Combat skills or magic, what is that? You can eat it, master. Pop Pop doesn't know anything about those things. Pop likes to bask in the sun. Pop likes to eat magic elements. Pop Pop said and pounced towards Yun Sheng. Yun Sheng only felt a strange force coming towards her. Before the egg even got close, her small body flew out and fell on her back. Pop Pop, I didn't do it on purpose, master. That egg was only the size of a chicken's egg, but its strength was amazing. Just now, it actually sent Yun Sheng flying. Don't come over. Wait, eat magic elements. Don't tell me that the magic elements that I accumulated after eating the moonlight grass couldn't be condensed because of you. Yun Sheng climbed up in a sorry state, full of grief and indignation. Puff Puff, kiss master. Puff Puff has been in the beast language ring for so long. I was so hungry and accidentally ate too much. Master, are you blaming Puff Puff? The winged puff egg wailed. In an instant, the whole roof seemed like it was going to be overturned. The crying sound came wave after wave, and the cups and bowls in the room immediately broke. Yun Sheng only felt her scalp go numb. If someone really wanted to cry, she should be the one crying. This was her virgin summon. Turning her grief and indignation into speed, Yun Sheng covered the puffed egg tightly with lightning speed. It had only howled a few times, but the sound was already so shocking. Was this thing really left behind by her own mother? Was she sure it was her own mother? Was it not a gift from a mobile top-up? The most miserable thing was that Yun Sheng quickly found out that this magical beast egg in the beast language ring was stained with her own blood along with the ring. Unknowingly, it had signed a life contract with Yun Sheng. There were 3 types of beast contracts. One was the master-servant contract, one was the equal contract, and the last one was the life contract. Among the 3, the life contract was the most important and had the greatest connection with the summoner. The equal contract and the master-servant contract had fewer restrictions, and it was also more convenient to cancel the contract. This magical beast egg was specially kept by Hu Jiuxing for his daughter in the early years. He had a good impression of Yun Sheng, so he only needed to use a drop of blood to form a contract. Yun Sheng could only accept this fact. Pop Pop was sent back to the beast language ring. Yun Sheng only felt that all her strength had been sucked out. She thought for a while and decided to check on the situation of the 2-headed dog after the operation. Chapter 17. Yun Sheng prepared some porridge and went to the storage room. The 2-headed hound had just undergone surgery to separate its body. There were no blood tonics or nutrient solutions in this world. Even though Yun Sheng handled it well, the 2-headed hound was still weak from the massive blood loss. Yun Sheng thought that it had not woken up yet. Who would have thought that when she entered, she would hear a barking sound? Wasn't that the 2-headed dog? The small dog that was missing a head looked very strong. The right side of its head was a little crooked and it had a pair of eyes that looked like glass balls. The hair that had been removed because of the surgery had grown a layer of short hair overnight. Although it was a little thin, it looked like a modern dachshund. You're awake. What a tenacious little guy. Perhaps it was because Yunsheng had saved it, but the small dog was less hostile towards Yunsheng. However, when Yunsheng put down the porridge, it refused to eat. You don't like to eat? If you don't eat, your injuries won't heal. Yunsheng sighed. Perhaps she would have to go to the hunters in the village and buy some raw meat. Oh no, I only remembered the summoning and forgot to report to the temple. After becoming a herbalist at the temple, Yunsheng had to go to the temple for 4 hours every day to help great magician Yang sort and gather herbs. Yunsheng hurriedly left the house. After she left, the small dog looked at the porridge suspiciously. The words that the human had said just now still rang in its ears. If it didn't eat, its injuries wouldn't heal. It hesitated and sniffed the porridge, showing a look of disgust. When Yunsheng arrived at the temple, it was already noon. Great magician Yang had a gloomy face as he fiercely reprimanded her. Go and tidy up the pharmacy. Before the sun sets, gather all the herbs. If you don't do it well, you don't need to get your salary this month. Also, don't go into the innermost storage room otherwise. The new great magician's face was cold. Just based on his cold aura, normal children wouldn't even want to get close to him. As he spoke, a cold light flashed in his gloomy eyes. Yunsheng's heart skipped a beat when he stared at her. She quickly pretended to be obedient and nodded her head. There are nearly 1,000 types of medicine in the pharmacy. Let's see how she can sort them out in 4 hours. She was just a little girl who had just stepped into the world. Yet she actually made him, an archmagus, wait for her. She really didn't know the immensity of heaven and earth. After Yang Su left, Yi Baiming walked out from the side. Yunsheng looked at the Dharma Temple's pharmacy. There were close to 1,000 types of herbs and she frowned. It was indeed not easy to earn a silver coin a month. Fortunately, Yunsheng was quite experienced in the management of medicinal herbs. According to her own common sense, she first carefully identified the types of each herb, and then recorded them in the small booklet. Unknowingly, the sky outside had already darkened, and Yunsheng's nose was filled with the fragrance. Her stomach grumbled uncontrollably. Only then did Yunsheng remember that she had left in a hurry this morning and didn't even have breakfast. The source of the fragrance was Yi Baiming, who had sat down beside the window without her noticing. In his hand he was holding a fluffy and soft steamed bun. Little wild cat, are you hungry? Do you want to eat? Ah. Yi Baiming winked at Yunsheng. His misty eyes had a mischievous smile. Yunsheng silently said in her heart, I would rather die than be humiliated. I won't eat food given to me. After another quarter of an hour, those words had changed. Dignity is precious, freedom is even more valuable. If it's for food, both can be thrown away. Just as she waved her hand and was about to snatch the food in Yi Baiming's hand, the latter elegantly took a bite of the steamed bun. Yunsheng was so angry that she almost choked. You're too slow. With your speed, if you meet that girl from Flaming Rock Village 100 times, you'll die 100 times. You won't be so lucky every time. Yi Baiming conjured up a roasted beast leg in his hand and threw it to Yunsheng. Yunsheng hesitated for a moment as she looked at the beast leg in her hand. She recognized that it was the leg of a magical beast. The price of one was not cheap. Even the village chief's family could not afford to eat it more than a few times. With your small body, if you don't eat some magical beast meat, your physical strength will not improve. Magical beast meat had the effect of strengthening the body. Yunsheng had never eaten magical beast meat before. The fragrance of the food was too tempting. Yunsheng did not care about her manners and began to gnaw on the beast leg. Thinking of the little dog at home, Yunsheng couldn't help slowing down her eating speed. You have to eat it quickly. I stole this beast leg from great magician Yang. If he finds out, it would be bad. Yi Baiming's voice had just fallen when Yunsheng violently coughed. Her black eyes almost popped out of their sockets. Don't stare at me. If you're worried about being found out, just go up the mountain and hunt a few magical beasts. But I'll say the ugly words first. Whoever eats it will be responsible. I won't help you. Yi Baiming said this and then jumped. He had already disappeared without a trace, leaving behind a flustered and exasperated Yunsheng. This damn blind man, he's even more cunning than a fox. Yunsheng fiercely bit down on the beast leg in her hand as if Yi Baiming was the beast leg in her mouth. But then again, that blind man's culinary skills were pretty good. Yun Shang quickly discovered that under the effect of the magical beast meat, she could feel a heat spreading through her limbs. She had heard that magical beast meat could strengthen the body. It seemed like this was true. Yun Shang decided that she would go up the mountain tomorrow morning to hunt some magical beasts. When Great Magician Yang approached the pharmacy around sunset, Yun Shang was already respectfully waiting there. A booklet with delicate handwriting was presented. It had all kinds of herbs neatly organized and categorized. Great Magician Yang. The temple has a total of 988 kinds of herbs. Among them, there are over 50 that have gone bad and moldy. I've already cleaned them up. The remaining 938 kinds have been placed in different drawers. Each drawer has a corresponding number. You can compare them one by one. Yun Shang handed over the booklet. Great Magician Yang looked at it and couldn't help being stunned. He had deliberately made things difficult for Yun Shang, but who would have thought that she would only use a few hours to tidy up the storehouse? After comparing them one by one, he found that all the herbs were good. Great Magician Yang's expression relaxed a bit. He secretly said in his heart, I didn't think that in this small mountain village, there would be a child that is so proficient in medicine. It's a pity that she was born poor and doesn't know magic. Otherwise, if she specialized in magic, she might have been able to inherit my legacy. Great Magician Yang pondered for a moment. After comparing the booklet, he couldn't find any flaws, so Yun Shang could go back. Great Magician Yang. I found that the parsnip in the pharmacy is already gone. This is a commonly used cold medicine. The villagers often use it, and there is a large patch in the back of the mountain. How about I go up the mountain tomorrow and pick some? Yun Shang had an obedient look on her face. That's fine too. You're still young and it's inconvenient for you to go up the mountain alone. I'll have Baiming go with you. Magician Yang thought about it and agreed to Yun Shang's request. When Yun Shang returned home, she found that the bowl of porridge she had left in the morning was still full. She placed the remaining magical beast leg in front of the small dog. The small dog looked at Yun Shang and finally couldn't hold back. It bit on the leg of the magical beast and began to gnaw on it. Yun Shang's lips curled into a smile. Chapter 18. She 11's A short figure walked through the lush forest. The windbreak root grew on the cliffs of the Thousand Beasts Graveyard Mountain. Yun Shang had to pass through a primeval forest to pick herbs in the mountain. As the mountain grew higher, the forest became more and more uninhabited. In some places, the rotten leaves were piled up to half a person's height. If a person accidentally stepped on it, it would be disastrous. Yun Shang carried a medicine basket on her back and tied her sleeves and trousers tightly with hemp rope. She held a walking stick in one hand and used the other hand to push away the vegetation in front of her. Xiaohei, don't follow me. Go back. Yun Shang walked a few steps before hearing footsteps behind her. She had no choice but to stop. Behind her, the recovered dachshund Xiaohei followed Yun Shang. This little dog's recovery was unexpectedly good, especially after eating some magic beast meat. In just 2 nights, it had recovered its strength. Perhaps it was because of the magic beast's leg, but it refused to leave even when Yun Shang drove it away several times. This morning, when Yun Shang went up the mountain to pick herbs, it followed behind her. Leave immediately. Yun Shang pretended to be angry. The mountain was very dangerous and it was just an ordinary dog. It was too dangerous. Seeing that Yun Shang was angry, the little dog drooped its head and ran down the mountain with its tail between its legs. Seeing that the little dog had disappeared, Yun Shang felt relieved and walked up the mountain. In her previous life, she had followed ginseng farmers into the mountains to pick old ginseng, so she was very familiar with picking herbs in the mountains. Although Great Magician Yang told her to bring Yi Baiming, Yun Shang automatically rejected this suggestion. That brat was young, but he was full of evil tricks. Yun Shang thought that she had lived for more than 20 years, and in this life she was almost 30 years old. Yet she had been tricked by him twice. She was already gnashing her teeth in hatred. Besides, Yun Shang muttered, no matter how good the other party was, he was still blind. She didn't have the mood to take care of another person in the deep mountains. Yun Shang obviously didn't know enough about this world. What she didn't know was that when one practiced martial arts to a high level, one's skin, hair, flesh, and even the other 7 orifices would become tens of times more sensitive. It was hard to say who would take care of who. Yunsheng picked the windbreak grass. This journey seemed to be surprisingly smooth. Occasionally, they would only encounter some first-order low-level magical beasts. Suddenly, Yunsheng heard a commotion behind her. She looked back warily. Along the way, Yunsheng put a few animal traps that she asked Uncle Tai to make in the forest, hoping to catch some prey. It was still early. Thinking of the moonlight grass beside the strange tomb, Yunsheng followed her memory until she found the abandoned beast tomb. In front of the beast tomb, the moonlight grass was unusually lush. I'll go back to the mountains to take a look. If I'm lucky, I'll be able to give my dog and my family more food tonight. After Yunsheng filled the basket with herbs, she turned back the way she came. Not long after she left, a figure quietly stood on top of the beast tomb. It was Yi Baiming. Yunsheng didn't know that not long after she left the temple, the bad boy Yi Baiming, whom she called Bad Boy, had been tailing her. He had unknowingly become her bodyguard. Compared to Yunsheng, who was fully armed, Yi Baiming was much more relaxed. The rugged mountain road was like flat ground under his feet. He ran faster than a rabbit. Most of the time he was a few steps ahead of Yunsheng. He would stop at a fork in the mountain and clear out the second-order and third-order magical beasts that were a threat. He left a few first-order and second-order magical beasts for Yunsheng to practice on. Later on, after Yi Baiming confirmed that there were no threatening magical beasts nearby, he lay down on a tree and rested for a while, waiting for Yunsheng to catch up with him. Under Yi Baiming's secret protection, Yunsheng's journey was smooth. Moonlight grass? This little wildcat is usually so clever, but this time she really misjudged. Compared to this abandoned beast lair, the moonlight grass is not even worth mentioning. Yi Baiming walked to the inconspicuous beast lair and smelled the damp wind blowing from the beast lair. Yi Baiming felt around the entrance of the cave for a while. When he found that the magical beast was wet, he thought to himself, there must have been a newborn magical beast here a few days ago. From the looks of it, that magical beast's level isn't low. A green magic array appeared under Yi Baiming's feet. A few green wind elements poured out and entered the beast's lair. Wind had the sharpest senses and could allow people to quickly detect the situation in the cave. The dangers of an unknown cave were unknown. It was too dangerous to enter alone. Yi Baiming was young, but it was unknown where he learned to be so cautious. If Yunsheng saw this scene, her mouth would have formed the shape of an zero. It turned out that this young man from the temple, Yi Baiming, was not only a dual cultivator of magic and martial arts. He was also a multi-elemental sorcerer. It was too unfair. A young man who was not even 10 years old had such shocking talent. What was even more commendable was that his temperament was like that of an adult's. He was calm and collected. He was simply a monster. At this time, Yunsheng had already turned back to check on the animal traps she had placed along the way. As a doctor, Yunsheng knew very well that diet during puberty was very important. After tasting the magical beast's meat, she wanted to improve her diet and strengthen her body. At this moment, she heard the cry of a young magical beast. The source of the sound was one of the traps that Yunsheng had placed earlier. A level 2 magical beast, the golden rhinoceros boar, was caught in the trap. Yunsheng's trap had gone through special processing. It was sharper than a normal trap. The most fatal metal spike was even smeared with a small amount of mandrake juice. After Yunsheng discovered the small boar, she was not in a hurry to approach it. She first crept beside it and carefully observed it. This small boar was obviously out hunting for food. In a moment of carelessness, it stepped on the trap. Its hind leg was completely pierced by the sharp iron spike. Blood flowed out, and it let out a mournful cry. After struggling for a few times, the anesthetic took effect, and it immediately fell to the ground with a plop, unconscious. Looks like we're in for a treat today. Yunsheng could not help but be delighted. The golden rhinoceros boar was not commonly seen. This magical beast liked to appear in pairs. This small boar was very small. It looked like it was a lone boar. If they caught it, it would definitely be a delicacy. Yunsheng quickly walked forward and wanted to open the trap. Just as Yunsheng was about to crouch down to open the trap, she heard a swoosh sound behind her ear. An arrow flew past her shoulder. Yunsheng reacted quickly and rolled away to avoid it. A few strong youths scurried out from the bushes at the side. The one in the lead had a longbow on his back and was dressed like a young hunter. He was an old acquaintance of Yun Shang. It was Lei Hu and his group of friends who had an unsuccessful fight with Yun Shang on the hillside of the village earlier. Lei Hu had stayed in the martial arts school in the town for a long time. All kinds of hunting activities were popular among martial artists. After he returned to the village, he wanted to go up the mountain to hunt a magical beast, so that he could show off at the martial arts school. Lei Hu was also a clever person. He had asked the old hunter and found out that only in the depths of the Thousand Beasts graveyard could one catch a slightly higher level magical beast. Thus, he encouraged the children of the hunters in the village to go up the mountain together. Who knew that not long after they went up the mountain, they would see Yun Shang catching the small boar. If it had been someone else, Lei Hu could only be jealous. But when he saw that the person who caught the small boar was that good-for-nothing Yun Shang, he was jealous and evil at the same time. There was no one around. Yun Shang had come alone. He had heard that she had become a herbalist in the Dharma temple. She must have come into the mountain to gather herbs. In such a deep forest, the little good-for-nothing would not be so lucky. The village chief could not come and save her again. Little good-for-nothing, it's you again. This small boar is mine. If you know what's good for you, hand it over. Lei Hu grinned and waved his stone-like fist, threatening Yun Shang to hand over the prey. Chapter 19. Bah, you're not worthy. According to the rules of the hunters in the mountains, the prey belongs to whoever sets the trap. Look carefully, I set the trap. There's a Shang character on it. Before Yun Shang came out, she had asked the experienced hunters about it. In order to avoid disputes, the hunters had an unwritten rule that they could not break. When she asked Uncle Iron to make the trap, she had already been careful and engraved her name on it. The few youths glanced at the trap and saw the Shang character. They immediately stuttered. Little trash, it's mine if I say it's mine. I'm the king of the children in Banana Leaf Village. You disobeyed me time and time again. You're asking for a beating. Lei Hu was not as smart as Yun Shang. After being questioned, he flew into a rage out of humiliation. He did not care about the mountain boar anymore. His figure flashed and he wanted to capture Yun Shang. Yun Shang was already prepared. She spread her legs and ran forward. Several youths followed behind her, running all the way forward. Who knew that after running a few steps, they heard a series of screams. Two of them stepped on the trap one after another. Their flesh was torn open and they howled in pain. Along the way, Yun Shang had placed 7 to 8 hunting devices. She lured people towards the location of the hunting devices. As expected, these martial arts students who only had physical strength but no brains suffered a hidden disadvantage. When Lei Hu saw this, he was so angry that his face turned red. He did not care about the injuries of his companions behind him and shouted loudly. Just like last time, he doubled his speed in an instant. Yun Shang ran all the way and seemed to have run out of energy. She was careless and was pounced on by Lei Hu like a hungry dog and pinned to the ground. The two of them wrestled together. Lei Hu was strong and tall. In a short while, he had twisted Yun Shang into a ball. Little trash, I'll see how you're going to play tricks now. Lei Hu had just said this when he suddenly felt his arm go numb. He lost control of his entire right hand and hung down. What did you do? Lei Hu looked at his right hand in horror, and realized that he couldn't feel it at all. Yun Shang kicked Lei Hu away with a rabbit kick. She was still holding a bone needle in her hand. Yun Shang knew that she was no match for Lei Hu in terms of physical strength, so she pretended to be ambushed and waited for Lei Hu to get close to her. Then, she looked at the main acupoint on his hand and inserted a needle. Whose prey is it? Yun Shang straightened her back with a calm expression. She waved the bone needle in her hand in front of Lei Hu. This is sorcery? Lei Hu couldn't understand how Yun Shang was able to turn his arm into cotton with a bone needle, the size of an embroidery needle. If this wasn't demonic arts, what was it? You're the one with sorcery. Your whole family is sorcery. This is medicine. Yun Shang didn't use much force. She used the lightest amount of mandala lotus on the bone needle. A youth covered in blood ran over from behind. Lei Hu took a closer look and couldn't help but turn pale with fright. Ameng, what happened? That youth was one of the youths that entered the mountain with Lei Hu earlier. His entire body was covered in blood, and there was a large hole in his left leg. Brother Hu, it's not good. Magic beast, level 3 magic beast. The youth's face was pale as he shouted as he walked. When he crawled in front of Lei Hu, he lost too much blood and couldn't catch his breath. He immediately fainted. Looking at the wound on his leg, blood flowed out continuously from the large hole as if it was pierced by some sharp weapon. Level 3 magic beast. Yun Sheng and Lei Hu's minds went blank. They both thought of the level 2 little boar at the same time. The little boar was clearly still a cub. How could there not be adult golden rhino boars guarding a cub? Clearly, the little boar took advantage of the fact that its parents weren't paying attention and sneaked out to look for food. It just happened to meet Yun Sheng's hunting tool. Golden rhino boars always come in pairs. 2 level 3 magic beasts. Not to mention Lei Hu and Yun Sheng. Even if the village chief came personally, he could only barely fight. Lei Hu woke up with the sound of ripping silk. What are you doing? After all, Lei Hu was only a youth in his teens. Although he liked to fight, he still lacked actual combat experience with magic beasts. For a moment he didn't know what to do. Seeing Yun Sheng tear open Ah Meng's trousers, Lei Hu was shocked. He didn't care that his right hand was still numb and couldn't move. He made a move to push Yun Sheng away. Shut up. If you don't want him to become a cripple, don't interrupt. He has lost too much blood. If we don't stop the bleeding, even if we save him, his leg will be crippled. Yun Sheng swiftly tore off a few strips of cloth and tied them tightly around Ah Meng's wound, stopping the blood from gushing out. She then used bone needles to poke a few acupoints around him. The bleeding stopped immediately. She took out a few flowers to stop the bleeding, chewed them and covered the wound. Lei Hu had never seen such a method of treating wounds. Before he could blink his eyes, Ah Meng's wound had stopped bleeding. This was even better than the sorcerers of the deity temple. After a quarter of an hour, loosen his wound. If it's still bleeding, tie it up again. Loosen it up again and again until the bleeding is completely stopped. Remember, every quarter of an hour do not stop. Otherwise his meridians will die. Yun Sheng methodically treated the wound. She got up and ran back to where she came from. What are you doing now? Lei Hu was tongue-tied. Go back and save them? Are you going to watch them die? You call yourself the king of the children. What kind of bullshit king of the children are you? Yun Sheng glared at him. Her figure flashed, and she disappeared from the other side of the mountain. Do you want to die? That's a level 3 magic beast. Lei Hu finally reacted, but Yun Sheng was already gone. After being yelled at by Yun Sheng, Lei Hu felt even more ashamed. To think that he, a registered martial arts student, could not even match up to a little girl. A level 3 magic beast. She really did not want to live anymore. Only then would she seek death. Lei Hu was extremely anxious, but he could not leave the unconscious Ah Meng behind. Just as he was anxious and did not know what to do, a cold voice came from behind him. You again? Where is she? Lei Hu looked up and saw a handsome young man with a dark face. It had only been half an hour, and that little wild cat had already caused trouble? Lei Hu did not recognize Yi Baiming, but from the way he looked at him, it was obvious that he recognized him. This youth looked even younger than him, but the aura around him made Lei Hu unable to move. Even the martial arts masters in the martial arts hall could not compare to this kind of feeling. You're talking about the little trash? No, you're talking about Yun Sheng. She went to save people. Level 3 magic beast. Quickly go save her. There are 2 level 3 golden rhino boars over there. Lei Hu realized that the youth in front of him could save them. Level 3 magic beast. Nonsense. When the youth heard Lei Hu's words, his expression changed drastically. He did not expect that there would be level 3 magic beasts nearby. He turned around and sent Lei Hu flying with a flying kick. Lei Hu felt a sharp pain in his chin. He knew that his jaw had been dislocated from the kick. Lei Hu groaned inwardly. Young master, when did I offend you? Remember, the next time you bully her, it won't just be your chin that gets hurt. A light green wind element swept up. Yi Baiming used a levitation technique and flashed into the forest. Chapter 20. Yun Sheng's experience in fighting magical beasts was pitifully little. Before entering the mountains, She had specially asked the old hunters in the village about their experiences in encountering magical beasts. If they encountered a level 1 magical beast, they could use a hunting device to capture it. If they encountered a level 2 magical beast, they could use the hunting device and their own abilities to capture it. If they encountered a level 3 magical beast, unless they had a mage or a martial master, there was no need to think about anything else. 3 words. Run for your life. Fortunately, there were not many magical beasts in the mountains, and the golden rhino boar was considered one of the most difficult to deal with. Female golden rhino boars were different from male golden rhino boars. Male golden rhino boars were like human warriors, good at violent collisions. Female golden rhino boars were different from male golden rhino boars. They were smaller in size but were very good at magic, especially earth magic and shockwaves. Yun Shang had always been well prepared when doing things. When she had first gathered information about magical beasts, she had not expected to use this experience to take risks. She had only been prepared for any eventuality. She had never thought that she would be so unlucky as to face 2 level 3 golden rhino boars. She was cautious by nature and was not a reckless person. She had turned around to save the village youths not because she was trying to be brave, but because she knew that the little boar had fallen into her ambush. It must have been the smell of its blood that had attracted the 2 boars. If the village youths died because of this, it would be equivalent to them dying because of her. When Yun Shang rushed back, she saw a boar the size of a calf blocking the mountain path. The 2 golden rhino boars, one male and one female, were about the size of an adult water buffalo in the village. Their bodies were covered in long shiny black fur, and 2 long tusks protruded from their mouths. Their limbs were thick and powerful, leaving a trail of deep footprints wherever they stepped. These 2 boars were also cunning. They seemed to know that the youths in front of them would not be able to withstand a single blow. The female wild boar was guarding beside the unconscious young boar. The young boar was unconscious for no reason. The female wild boar was very anxious and kept licking the young boar. The boar's fangs were still bleeding. The hole in Ameng's leg must have been caused by this boar. These people were only the children of a hunter family, so their skills were not as good as Lei Hu's. Fortunately, there was only one wild boar. Although they were no match for it, they could still survive by combining their strength. However, seeing that everyone's strength was exhausted and Lei Hu still hadn't returned after a long time, the few of them were already exhausted. The golden rhino boar deserved to be called the overlord of the mountains. Its strength seemed to be inexhaustible. It aimed at a young man, and its 2 fangs pierced into the young man's abdomen, lifting him up high. Just as the young man was about to land on the ground, an opening appeared in his chest. If he fell, he would definitely be pierced through by the 2 fangs. Bastard! Seeing this, Yun Shang gritted her teeth and threw a handful of bone needles at the golden rhino boar. The golden rhino boar was famous for its thick skin. A few bone needles were unable to pierce through its thick skin. However, Yun Shang's aim was extremely accurate. Although the needles did not injure the muscles and bones, they caused some pain and successfully attracted the attention of the wild boar. The wild boar did not expect that there would be a fish that escaped the net. Its eyes turned and fiercely glared at the thin and weak Yun Shang. Yun Shang used the same trick again, and led the wild boar towards the mountain path with the hunting devices. But 2 legs were no match for 4 legs. The golden rhino boar appeared in the mountains all year round. As it walked on the rugged mountain path, it was like a tank, crushing everything as it passed. Some small shrubs were even directly crushed by its strong body. Yun Shang looked in the right direction and pretended to walk past the 2 hunting devices. Who would have thought that the wild boar would step on the trap and instantly deform it? This was bad. This kind of conventional hunting device was not of any use at all. Yun Shang secretly cursed. She knew that there was no way out. Yun Shang heard the sound of footsteps getting closer and closer behind her ear. She did not even dare to turn her head. A steep downhill path appeared in front of her. Seeing that Yun Shang was about to rush down, she suddenly changed her pace. Like a little monkey, she climbed up a tree. The wild boar charged forward and directly rolled down the mountain. The wild boar's cumbersome body rolled all the way down and it let out a burst of furious howls. The wild boar that weighed no less than 300 pounds tried to climb out of a withered leaf. Unexpectedly, at this moment, the soil under its body collapsed, and muddy bubbles appeared one after another. At the bottom of the hill, there was actually a bottomless marsh gas pool. In this kind of deep mountain forest, the withered leaves piled up together and did not see the sun all year round. The withered leaves and rotten branches rotted and could easily form a deadly marsh. The hunters of Banana Leaf Village had relied on hundreds of years of hunting to figure out the most dangerous swamps in the Thousand Beast Graveyard Mountain area. Yun Shang had kept these places in mind and had to avoid them along the way. The golden rhino boar was also blinded by anger, which was why it followed Yun Shang and ran around randomly. The more the wild boar struggled, the faster it sank. In just a short while, the entire wild boar sank down and no longer moved, leaving only a few bubbles. Yun Shang waited until the golden rhino boar had completely sunk before she gasped for breath and climbed down from the tree. Fortunately, she was smart and had already discovered that there was a marsh at the bottom of this hill. Even if it was a level 3 magical beast, if it encountered a large marsh without wings, there was only a dead end. After taking care of one, there was still another. Yun Shang touched the bone needles on her body. In her panic, she had used many bone needles and there were not many bone needles with anesthetic left. Yun Shang was a little regretful. Although the anesthetic had a temporary paralyzing effect, the bone needles were obviously too weak for a huge magical beast like the golden rhino boar. The female golden rhino boar was guarding the little wild boar, and could not be lured away. If she wanted to kill it, she could only do it with her wits. Yun Shang took out the small scalpel, bit it in her mouth and quietly dived back. The hunters were lying on the ground and had long lost consciousness. The female golden rhino boar was suspicious and looked in the direction that Yun Shang and the male golden rhino boar had disappeared. After a long time, even the female golden rhino boar realized that something was wrong. Could it be that a little girl who looked like a little girl was more difficult to deal with than a few teenage boys? At this moment there was a rustling sound from the side of the thicket. The female golden rhino boar was alert. It spread out its 4 limbs and a light flashed in its eyes. An earthy yellow magic array appeared under its feet and its 4 limbs stomped. A cloud of dust flew and the hard mountain ground changed in an instant, as if a calm lake was disturbed. The ground instantly became the surface of a lake with wind and waves. A wave of vibration rose and with a whoosh, it attacked the thicket. Just as the female golden rhino boar used its first magic attack, an inconspicuous figure scurried down from the tree like a goshawk crouching to hunt and suddenly landed on the back of the female golden rhino boar. Chapter 21. Magic-type magical beasts were the same as mages. They were good at long-range attacks and not good at close combat. Moreover, after launching a magical attack, they needed to accumulate magical elements for a second magical attack. Yun Shang had anticipated this point, so she hid in the tree and waited for the female golden rhinoceros boar to launch a shockwave before swooping down. She rode on the female golden rhinoceros boar's back and clamped her legs tightly around the golden rhinoceros boar's waist. Using all the strength in her body, she stabbed the sharp scalpel into the golden rhinoceros boar's right eye. The golden rhinoceros boar's skin was incomparably hard. Only its pair of eyes were extremely weak, which was its most fatal weakness. After stabbing the scalpel, Yun Shang turned her wrist and used all her strength to gouge out the golden rhinoceros boar's right eye. The female golden rhinoceros boar let out a deafening howl. It didn't expect that it would be plotted against by a little girl today. Yun Shang still underestimated the power of a magical beast when it was in a rage. In pain and anger, the golden rhinoceros boar stood up on its hind legs. Like a person, it fiercely threw Yun Shang, who was on its back, out. Yun Shang was thrown to the ground. She didn't even have time to feel the pain and jumped up. In front of her, the golden rhinoceros boar was ferociously staring at Yun Shang. Its already blinded right eye was bleeding non-stop. Its left eye was scarlet red. Under its feet, an earthy yellow magical formation formed once again. Yun Shang's face was pale. She realized that the rank 3 female golden rhinoceros boar was not as simple as the rank 1 willow green snake. It could actually launch 2 consecutive magical attacks in a short period of time while it was heavily injured. Wave-like ripples appeared on the surface of the ground again. Yun Shang felt as if she was standing on a small boat riding the wind and breaking the waves. She couldn't stand steadily. The blood-stained scalpel in her hand dripped with sticky blood. Her clothes were ragged and there were many wounds on her hands and feet. When Yi Biming rushed over, he bumped into that scene. He couldn't see Yunshang's face, but he could hear the intermittent panting of the little wild cat and the smell of human blood in the air. He didn't know if it was Yunshang's. That damned magical beast. His heart tightened for no reason. It actually dared to hurt her. A murderous aura appeared on Yi Biming's handsome face. A black aura surged around him like a venomous snake. Just as he was about to make a move to kill, a puzzled expression appeared on his face. This feeling. The forest suddenly quieted down. The golden rhinoceros boar that was gathering earth element magic stopped. The beast's remaining eye was filled with fear. A brand new magic array floated up beside Yunshang. Her pale face was as delicate as jade in the magic array. It was a magic array. A magic array that symbolized summoners. Yi Biming was keenly aware that there was a magical beast's aura around them. This aura was abnormally active. Beast summoner. Yi Biming's mouth twitched. He didn't know whether to laugh or cry. It turned out that the little wild cat was quite black-bellied. She was actually a beast summoner. But why didn't her magical beast come out for a long time? Even Yi Biming was very curious for a moment. What rank would the summoned beast be? He even wondered what the other party's attribute would be. Inside the summoning array, the magic lines flashed. But the beast didn't appear as expected. Bobo. Yunshang summoned for a long time, but found that the damned Bobo didn't appear. Just as Yunshang was stunned, the golden rhinoceros boar had already accumulated enough magic elements. A terrifying small vibration wave was about to form. Just as the golden rhinoceros boar was about to launch a fatal blow, Yunshang gritted her teeth and ran forward. At this juncture she had no ability. She could only desperately escape. Beneath her feet the ground shook like a tide. Yunshang staggered and fell to the ground. She seemed to have felt the golden rhinoceros boar behind her approaching, and the heavy golden rhinoceros boar's hooves breaking her spine. At this moment, there was a suspicious tremor in the trees in front. A small beast figure came out from the trees. Xiaohei. Yunshang didn't expect that Xiaohei puppy didn't leave and had been following her. The puppy's light brown eyes were a bit blank, as if it didn't understand why Yunshang was lying on the ground. Behind her, the golden rhinoceros boar's cumbersome body was approaching step by step. Go! Yunshang didn't want to see the puppy get involved, so she shouted with all her might. Her trembling voice and face full of wounds were reflected in Xiaohei's pupils. There was a touch of anger in its eyes. As if it understood something, it took a step back. Suddenly, its light brown eyes sparkled. It stuck out its tongue and licked Yunshang's face. Shaking the short black fur on its body, Xiaohei's short limbs kicked hard. Its body was like a sharp arrow leaving the bowstring, and it suddenly pounced behind Yunshang. After a few days of recuperation, Xiaohei's injuries had recovered a lot. Its limbs were indescribably agile. It avoided the vibrations of the golden rhinoceros boar and leaped onto the treetops. Xiaohei shook its short fur in an extremely natural and unrestrained manner. Its eyes shone brightly, and a mysterious force that was like fighting energy, but also like magical elements, was emitted from its body. It raised its head and let out a low growl from its throat. Ah! A howl that sounded like a lone wolf. That howl scraped through the entire forest. In the forest, the wild beasts were restless. Yi Biming was shocked. He couldn't help but widen his eyes. This was a battle technique. That howl was like a wolf's, and it was full of vigor that shook the entire forest. The blue sky that was covered by the shade of the trees suddenly darkened. The light in the sky above the forest suddenly disappeared. It was as if someone had used a black cloth to cover all the light within a 1-mile radius. Xiaohei's battle technique awakened. Sky Devourer. The effect lasts for 15 minutes. In this moment, the forest was so dark that one couldn't even see their own fingers if they stretched out their hands. Yunsheng witnessed this scene and was shocked. She didn't expect Xiaohei to have such a battle technique. But the surprise only lasted for a moment. Yunsheng immediately realized that this was a great opportunity to ambush the golden rhinoceros boar. The opportunity couldn't be missed. A golden light flashed in Yunsheng's eyes. She aimed at the huge creature that was faintly visible in the darkness. She gathered all the strength in her body and aimed at the golden rhinoceros boar's heart. Using both her hands and feet, she strangely rushed up. The power of the dark needle burst forth from Yunshang's small body. Pain quickly spread in the golden rhinoceros boar's eyes. That strange force in its heart instantly tore its heart apart. A dying magical beast was terrifying. When the golden rhinoceros boar's heart was pierced, Yunshang only felt a huge force coming at her. The next moment her whole body was flung away. Before she lost consciousness, she felt her body fall into a hard arm. That pair of arms was strangely familiar. Chapter 22. Her body felt itchy, as if there were countless little bugs crawling on her body. Slowly, the little bug turned into a warm current that flowed between her limbs. Wherever it passed, it was as comfortable as bathing in the spring breeze, as if a feather was floating on her body. That feather went from her hands to her feet, to her chest. Yunshang felt as if a bucket of cold water had been poured over her head, and she immediately sobered up. An enlarged handsome face jumped into her eyes. Looking down, Yunshang discovered that Yi Baiming's hand had coincidentally landed on her chest. Damn pervert. Yunshang's face was as red as a tomato. In the next moment, she threw a punch at Yi Baiming's face. The latter didn't even bat an eyelid as he caught her embroidered fist, and said in a neutral tone, "With your figure, I might as well take advantage of a wall." Only then did Yunshang remember that her body was only 6 years old. It belonged to an unrivaled airport that couldn't differentiate between A and B sides. It really didn't have the capital to be taken advantage of. Why did Yi Baiming appear here? And why did he touch her body? Didn't his mother teach him the concept that men and women shouldn't touch each other? In a flash, the last scene of the fight with the golden rhinoceros boar flashed across her mind. The sky-swallowing dog's battle technique had caused the surroundings to be covered in darkness. She had taken the opportunity to sneak attack the golden rhinoceros boar. As the golden rhinoceros boar was dying, she had been thrown out, and then she had been caught by someone. Yunshang secretly circulated her qi, and discovered that the meridians in her body had become much more active. One of her 8 extraordinary meridians, the Yinwei meridian, had actually been opened. Just now, Yi Baiming had circulated his qi to help her open up her meridians? Did this count as dropping a sesame seed and picking up a watermelon? Yunshang couldn't believe it. Why did he help her? "You're the stupidest person I've ever met. You knew you weren't strong enough, yet you still fought. Just now, if I was a step slower, you would have died under the golden rhinoceros boar's hooves." Yi Baiming stopped. His expression wasn't good, and his words were filled with anger. Just now, when Yi Baiming massaged Yunshang's blood, he had used up a lot of internal energy. Yi Baiming. When it seemed that Yunshang was about to be swept under the golden rhinoceros boar's feet, Yi Baiming just Yunshang, Yi. Even though Yi Baiming was blind at that moment, a strange power surged in his body. Yunshang pursed her lips. Damn child. What right did he have to lecture her? I'm more than twice your age. But thinking about it, she was a little rash. In the end, it was because she had too little experience fighting magical beasts. Xiaohei. Yunshang looked around and found the little puppy curled up and lying on the side. It looked like the battle technique just now had exhausted it. This magical beast. Yi Baiming pursed his lips. The words were on the tip of his tongue, but he didn't ask them. Yunshang's body had recovered quite a bit under the influence of his internal energy. After adjusting her breathing on the spot for a while, she could walk normally. The female golden rhinoceros boar's corpse was still lying on the side. Luckily, at the last moment, the hidden needle of the divine needle of medicine had shown its effect. Yunshang had used all her strength in the needle, and should have dealt a fatal blow to the golden rhinoceros boar's heart. The effect was not inferior to hitting a cow through a mountain. Yunshang did not forget her duty as a doctor. The first thing she did after waking up was to check on the injured hunters. Luckily, after a round of examination, she found that these people did not have any vital injuries. She simply bandaged their wounds. After a while, Lei Hu also limped over with Meng, who had just woken up. What happened to your chin? Yunshang saw that Lei Hu's chin was dislocated and he could not speak clearly. Without another word, she straightened his chin with a crack. Everyone was dumbfounded. Lei Hu rubbed his chin and realized that his chin really didn't hurt anymore. He stuttered and wanted to say something, but under Yi Baiming's cold gaze, Lei Hu did not dare to make a sound. This female golden rhinoceros boar is not small. I think it's more than 300 pounds. Yun Shang was delighted. Tonight's roasted golden rhinoceros boar was settled again. Don't have any ideas about that golden rhinoceros boar. Yi Baiming narrowed his eyes and moved his fingers. A green magic array rose from under the golden rhinoceros boar's heavy body. The magic array suspended the golden rhinoceros boar's body, which weighed several hundred pounds, and easily lifted it up. This golden rhinoceros boar is mine. That small one is yours. Carry it yourself. Yi Baiming slipped away and disappeared. He left behind a stunned Yun Shang and a group of bitter companions. After a while, an angry roar came from the forest. Yi Baiming, you bastard! A few crows that returned at night cawed and flew over. Miss Yun will help you carry it down. Lei Hu saw that Yun Shang was on a rampage and had nowhere to vent his anger. He gathered his courage and went forward with a few companions. Miss Yun. Yun Shang really wasn't used to such genteel words coming out of the mouth of a boar like Tsong Lei Hu. Yun Shang thought for a moment and decided to dispose of the small golden rhinoceros boar first. A rank 2 golden rhinoceros boar being carried down the mountain was still too eye-catching. Yun Shang, Lei Hu, and the others discussed and divided the golden rhinoceros boar according to the rules of the mountain. This mountain disaster turned out to be a blessing in disguise. Even though the biggest piece of meat was snatched away by Yi Baiming, this small golden rhinoceros boar was still pretty good. Yun Shang took advantage of the fact that the sky wasn't dark and hurriedly skinned and deboned the golden rhinoceros boar. After busying herself for half an hour, she successfully divided the golden rhinoceros boar. This entire process caused the nearby Lei Hu and the others to tremble from head to toe. All of them didn't even dare take a deep breath, and they prostrated themselves in admiration towards Yun Shang's miraculous skill in splitting the pieces. Anyone who had hunted magic beasts before knew that gathering magic beast meat and skinning magic beast skin was a great skill. If there was even the slightest mistake, it would be a great waste. But this small golden rhinoceros boar that weighed less than 100 caddies was like a ball of flour that could be casually kneaded in Yun Shang's hands. It was very smooth. Yun Shang's dissecting skills were truly too astonishing. She used all of her surgical skills on the golden rhinoceros boar. Skin was skin, bone was bone. A small scalpel was terrifyingly nimble. She was more skilled than any butcher in the village. Looking at her age, Lei Hu and the others really suspected that she was a butcher in her previous life. Moreover, she was a female butcher who killed without blinking an eye and destroyed the corpses without leaving a trace. Oh my God, they would never dare to offend her again. When evening came, the golden rhinoceros boar was divided up. Yun Shang's title had already been promoted from Miss Yun to Big Sister. In just one day's work, Yun Shang's status had smoothly changed from Little Trash to Banana Leaf Village's new king of children. Chapter 23. After the wild boar incident, Yun Shang returned home with a few pieces of high-quality magical beast meat. After explaining the origin of the magical beast meat to her father, Yun Shang cut some of the meat into minced meat and carefully fed it to Xiao He. Today, she was able to successfully escape from the mountain thanks to Xiao He. After going through such a life-and-death ordeal, the relationship between Yun Shang and Xiao He was obviously much more stable. If she didn't compare, she wouldn't have known. But now that she did, she almost vomited blood. Yun Shang quickly thought of her real summoned beast, that damned egg. In the Yun family's small house, the oil lamp was quickly extinguished. Yun Shang tiptoed out of the house and came to an open space in the medicinal field. After the magic circle lit up, it took a long time for the winged egg to appear. At this moment, the egg closed its wings and let out a loud flapping sound. Damn, it was actually sleeping. Yun Shang saw this and became even angrier. She violently hit the puffed egg. Only then did the latter wake up. His eyes were still drowsy. When he saw that it was Yun Shang who was calling him, he immediately became happy. Moi, my dear master, you missed me. Moi, I miss master so much. What kind of beast are you? I almost died during the day. If it wasn't for Xiao He, you would have lost your master. Yun Shang's eyes were almost spitting fire. What was this? Moi, sky-devouring mastiff. When the puffed egg saw Xiao Hei lying on the side coolly, its eyes were full of hearts. The egg somersaulted and pounced on Xiao Hei. Xiao Hei showed a trace of impatience. This egg was too noisy. Mastiffs were a mix of dogs and wolves. They were arrogant and untamed. Other than their own masters, they ignored all other people and magical beasts. Xiao Hei raised its meaty paw and slapped it, intending to push the puffed egg away. Who knew that it had seriously underestimated Moi's strength? The egg pressed down on Xiao Hei's head, and its body was directly pressed into the ground by the puffed egg. Moi, what did you say Xiao Hei is? Yun Shang had already adopted Xiao Hei, but even the most experienced hunter in the village could not recognize Xiao Hei's rank. Sky-devouring mastiff, a mutated magical beast with Bahuang bloodline. But master, since you have a sky-devouring mastiff, you don't need Moi. Moi is prettier and stronger than it. The puffed egg pitifully circled around Yun Shang. It's not my magical beast, it's my partner. Remember Moi, in the future it will be like you, my partner. Yun Shang did not contract Xiao Hei. With her current strength, she could not contract a second magical beast. She also did not want to enslave Xiao Hei. Xiao Hei crawled out of the ground and shook off the dust on its body. The disgust towards the puffed egg on its face had already turned into vigilance. If it could speak human language, it would definitely burst out with vulgarities. Damn, what kind of egg was this? Under Yun Shang's education, the puffed egg promised that the next time Yun Shang summoned it, it would immediately jump out with a whoosh. The night sky was pitch black, as if it had been splashed with ink. The night in the mountain village was quiet and beautiful. In the temple of Jiaoyi village, the female golden rhino boar's belly had already been cut open. Yi Baiming's slender fingers probed into the golden rhino boar's belly. After feeling around for a while, the golden rhino boar's heart was pulled out. The adult golden rhino boar's heart was the size of 2 adult fists, and was covered by a large number of fine blood vessels. Yi Baiming exerted force with his fingers and the heart immediately broke into 2 pieces. The inside of the heart was like a broken rice sieve, full of needle-sized holes. This was only the realm of Qi transformation, a realm that even a martial honor would find difficult to achieve. Was it her? Yi Baiming was the last person to make a move. Just as he saved Yun Shang, he discovered that the golden rhino boar had already died. Long before Yun Shang woke up, he had already examined the golden rhino boar's body. There were no fatal wounds on its body. Generally speaking, if a magical beast died without a fatal wound, it could only be due to a magical attack, or the most mysterious Qi transformation of Qi in martial arts. That was to cultivate one's Qi to perfection and be able to kill without leaving a trace, making it impossible for people to guard against. Yi Baiming vaguely remembered that the moment he fell into Yun Shang's hands last time, a strange power seemed to have entered his body. She could summon magical beasts? Although the summoning wasn't successful, she could use mysterious Qi, but she looked too weak to stand up to a gust of wind. Yun Shang, who exactly are you? While Yi Baiming was deep in thought, the sound of footsteps came from outside his room. When Great Magus Yang pushed open the door and entered, he said in a strange tone, I haven't seen you all day today. Where did you go? I went into the mountains to hunt. Didn't you say that I didn't have enough soul stones? Yi Baiming waved his hand and a 20-year soul stone fell into Great Magus Yang's hand. He had collected a soul stone from the female golden rhino boar's body. A 20-year soul stone? Are you trying to fool a child? If I want to increase my cultivation, I need a 200-year soul stone. I'm really unlucky. Earlier, I clearly predicted that there would be an abnormally powerful magical beast soul awakening in the banana leaf village area. I asked for help. Who would have thought that there wouldn't even be the slightest bit of a powerful magical beast's aura? Great Magus Yang was dissatisfied. So his goal in coming to Banana Leaf Village wasn't that simple. Although he said that, Great Magus Yang still put away the Earth-type soul stone. He still wasn't satisfied. In a few days, make a trip to the Dark Moon Mountain Range and help me find a 200-year soul stone. The Dark Moon Mountain Range was the closest mountain range to Banana Leaf Village. There were a large number of mid-level magical beasts there. Yi Baiming didn't reply. His silence indicated that he wasn't willing to do it. Not going. Don't tell me you don't plan on curing your eyes? In this world, Only I can cure your heavenly blindness. Great Magus Yang let out a crow's unpleasant laughter. Heavenly blindness referred to a person who was born blind. There was no way to cure it. Even divine magic was powerless. Although Yi Baiming had never mentioned it, he had always wanted to see the light in his heart. In his mind he was constantly thinking about how he had lost everything that should have belonged to him because he was blind, until great magician Yang appeared. He had said that he could cure his eyes. If only he could see. Various memories of the past flashed through his mind. His indifferent royal father, the palace servants who gossiped behind his back, the young girl who had resolutely left, and his mocking royal older brother. Yi Baiming knitted his brows and clenched his fists. The expression in his eyes was unclear. After a while, he relaxed his fists and left the temple like a whirlwind without saying a word. This brat seems to be getting stronger and stronger. If this continues one day, I'm afraid I won't be able to control him. I still have to speed up the drawing of that magic array. Like this, my many years of hard work will come true. Great Magus Yang thought to himself. Chapter 24. After the wild boar incident, Yun Shang's days as a herbalist continued to pass peacefully and orderly. Her accumulation of magical elements did not improve much. Yi Baiming had also mysteriously disappeared. According to great magician Yang, he had gone out to train. Yun Shang was a little surprised. In her impression, Yi Baiming almost never practiced martial arts. Every time she saw him, he was either sleeping on a tree or secretly eating. She did not expect him to go out to train. After eating magical beast meat for a while, Xiao Hei's body became a lot stronger. However, its size did not change much. Other than Yun Shang and the puffed egg which it could not resist, it looked like a cool black dog to the other villagers, including Yun Songhai. Yun Shang found out from the puffed egg that Xiao Hei was a mutated magical beast. Although Yun Shang did not know much about magical beasts, she knew that mutated magical beasts were very rare on the mainland. Lei Hu and his men also agreed that they would never reveal what happened on the mountain. Lei Hu stayed in the village for a few days before returning to town. Before he left, he didn't forget to wave his fist and warn his friends in the village to listen to Big Sister's words. After the herbs in the temple were sorted out, they began to receive patients one after another. However, Yi Baiming still did not return. The villagers who came to the temple were all suffering from headaches, fevers, diarrhea, and other minor ailments. 1 or 2 doses of medicine were enough to cure them. Therefore, Yun Shang did not have the chance to see great magician Yang use the so-called light magic to treat patients. Days passed like this for a few months. Due to proper care, Yun Shang's herbal field welcomed a harvest. Under the bright and beautiful sun, the hemostasis flowers bloomed beautifully in the Yun family's herbal field. Compared to other farmers' fields, the yield per mu was at least 20% higher. According to the village chief's opinion, the hemostasis flowers in the Yun family's herbal field could be rated as first-class herbs. A first-grade medicinal herb was a kind of glory to the entire village. This made Yun Shang overjoyed. Coincidentally, on this day, the village head's grandfather came to the village and said that he wanted to enter the city to sell hemostatic flowers. Yun Shang thought that it was a good idea to enter the city to buy hemostatic medicine, so she asked the village head's grandfather if he could take her into the city. The village chief thought about it and agreed to Yun Shang's request. Yun Shang then went to the temple to ask for a leave of absence from great magician Yang. She then followed the village chief's group to town Taishang, which was the closest to Banana Leaf Village. This was Yun Shang's first time leaving the village since she was born. Along the way, the carriages and horses rolled and bumped. After about half a day, the carriage finally stopped at the entrance of a small town. Although it was called a town, it was actually only 2 or 3 times bigger than Banana Leaf Village. Due to the fact that the surrounding 10 villages all relied on growing medicinal herbs for a living, the shops in this small town were mainly medicinal shops. Compared to the large cities that Yun Shang had seen in her previous life, the simple appearance of the town was simply not worth mentioning. Yun Shang couldn't help feeling a bit disappointed, but the village head's grandfather patted her head. Yun Shang, when we enter the town, don't wander around. Follow the village head's grandfather to the medicinal shop. Your father told you not to wander around before leaving. Yun Shang nodded her head in boredom. She followed the village chief and a few of the village's medicine farmers to the front of a medicine shop. This was a very ordinary medicinal shop. It wasn't very big, but the medicinal herbs in the shop could be considered complete. Banana Leaf Village's hemostatic flowers were all sold in this area. The village head's grandfather ordered several farmers to pick out the hemostatic flowers and began to haggle with the owner of the shop. Yun Sheng was on the side, looking at the various herbs in the shop. Hemostatic agent. Yun Sheng found the hemostatic agent she had been looking for a long time in a counter of the shop. The price was 15 copper coins. Yun Sheng went out this time with the 5 silver coins she won from Ding Lei. It was enough to buy a bottle of hemostatic agent. She was about to ask when the village head's grandfather angrily came forward and pulled Yun Sheng out. Yun Sheng had never seen the village head's grandfather so angry. His long beard fluttered in the wind. He was obviously very angry. This is clearly lowering the price. These hemostatic flowers are all of the best quality. You actually said that they are of the lowest quality and are only willing to pay 5 copper coins. I don't believe that the hemostatic flowers in Banana Leaf Village can't be sold after leaving your medicinal shop. Yun Sheng asked around and found out that the village head's grandfather had excitedly carried the hemostatic flowers into the shop. Who would have thought that the owner of the medicinal shop would haggle the price without saying anything? He cut the original price by half. 5 copper coins for 100 hemostatic flowers. Even the farmer's fertilizer and labor money couldn't be saved. The village head's grandfather came with the mouths of the villagers. As a result, the villagers couldn't even eat. It was no wonder that the village head's grandfather was so angry. Yun Sheng felt that something was wrong. She looked back and saw the owner of the medicinal shop with a sinister smile on his face. He was not afraid of the village head's threat at all. There was something wrong here. Yun Sheng was secretly puzzled. Sure enough, the village head went to a few more medicinal shops. Without exception, they either didn't accept the herbs of Banana Leaf Village or tried to haggle the price. Hour later, the villagers still hadn't sold a single hemostatic flower. Grandpa Village Head, there's no need to try anymore. Yun Sheng tugged on the village head's sleeve. They've already discussed it. Yun Sheng, do you think that Grandpa Village Head doesn't know that they've already colluded with each other? Needless to say, I also know what's going on. It must be the work of those people from Flaming Rock Village. The village head sighed. He had been the village head for so many years. If he couldn't even see through the tricks in this matter, then he would have lived in vain. But village head, if we can't sell the hemostatic flowers, how are we going to explain it to the villagers? The weather has been hot recently and the humidity is heavy. If we don't quickly deal with the hemostatic flowers and buy new fertilizer, not only won't everyone be able to eat, we won't even have time to plant a new batch of flowers. The villagers were all crying miserably. The villagers of Banana Leaf Village were the most honest villagers. They had never schemed against others in their lives. This was the first time they had encountered such a situation. Sigh, it's a pity that there's no Medicine Emperor Pavilion here. If there was one in town, I don't believe that these bastards would be able to do so. The village head spat heavily on the ground. The Medicine Emperor Pavilion was the largest medicinal herb store in the continent. It was said that there were all kinds of strange things in there, and there were also countless doctors and pharmacists. They didn't cheat the old or the young, and they would never carelessly lower the price of the herbs they bought. It was a pity that the Medicine Emperor Pavilion was only set up in cities and above. It would take at least 3 days and 3 nights to travel from Taishang Town to the nearest city. Grandpa Village Head, don't get angry first. We can't sell hemostatic flowers, but we can sell hemostatic agents. Yun Sheng suddenly said after a moment of contemplation. Hemostatic agent. Yun Sheng, what are you saying? Hemostatic agent isn't something that we can make. The village head was shocked. He thought that Yun Sheng was joking. I can make it. I've smelled the hemostatic agent earlier. I can guarantee that with 2 hemostatic flowers I can make 1 hemostatic agent. Yun Sheng raised her head confidently. Chapter 25. When they heard that Yun Sheng wanted to make her own medicine, other than the village head, almost all the villagers didn't believe it. During this period of time, Yun Sheng's reputation in the village had improved a lot due to the fact that she had become a herbal gathering boy, and the competition between her and Ding Lei. However, she was still a 6-year-old child. Even if she was talented in herbs, it didn't mean that she could make medicine. Not to mention, she could make medicine just by smelling the hemostatic agent. To make medicine, even if it was just a basic medicine like hemostatic agent, only a pharmacist or a specialized magic pharmacist could successfully make it. On the boundless continent, medicine was divided into herbal medicine and patent medicine. Herbal medicine generally referred to all the unprocessed herbs, while patent medicine referred to ancient medicine and magic medicine. Herbs like hemostatic flower and moonlight grass were the most basic herbs. They needed to be refined before they could be made into magic medicine or ancient medicine. According to the rules of the boundless continent, only pharmacists recognized by the Dharma Temple or the Medicine Emperor Pavilion had the qualifications to make medicine. Yun Shang was only the most basic herb gatherer. He wasn't even a medicine man who could decoct and test medicine. It was no wonder that the villagers were suspicious. Even though Yun Shang repeatedly promised that she could make hemostatic agents, the villagers didn't believe her. Only the village head remained silent. He sat on the bullock cart and didn't say a word. Time passed in the blink of an eye. Until sunset, the villagers still hadn't sold a single hemostatic flower. Everyone's expression was solemn. The hemostatic flower was the biggest source of income for Banana Leaf Village. If they couldn't sell it, it meant that the village's source of income was cut off. Looking at the carts of hemostatic flowers, none of the villagers were willing to return to the village. This was their hard work over the past few months. No one was willing to see it go to waste. The children and elders at home were all waiting for them to go back. Everyone's heart was heavy. The village head sat at the back of the cart, not saying a word as he smoked his water pipe. Village head, why don't we sell the hemostasis flower at a low price? 5 copper coins it is. At least we can save our money. We are running out of rice at home. One of the villagers couldn't help but complain with bloodshot eyes. Yun Sheng, who was watching from the side, was also anxious. She decided that even if the other villagers wanted to sell the hemostatic flowers at a cheap price, she would protect her batch of first-class hemostatic flowers. She still had the money from her job as a herbalist, so she could still survive for a while. She had to make the hemostatic agent successfully. The ashes of the hookah in the village head's hand flickered. He suddenly took a deep breath and exhaled the last cloud of smoke. Pull it back. Pull them all back and stop the blood serums. No one was allowed to sell the hemostatic flower cheaply. One had to know that they were not selling it for money, but for the reputation of the entire Banana Leaf Village. If Flaming Rock Village wants to punish us, we will fight back. The people of Banana Leaf Village are never easy to bully. It had been a long time since Grandpa Village Head had made such a big fuss. He was indeed a sorcerer who had once served in the army. Even though he was now enjoying the rest of his life in a small mountain village, today's humiliation had reinvigorated his blood. The village head's words were like thunder exploding in the ears of every villager. It also woke up the villagers who had originally intended to compromise. Even though they still didn't believe Yun Shang's words, they believed the village head's words. If the village head said that Yun Shang could do it, then she could do it. The villagers suppressed their anger and drove the ox cart back to Banana Leaf Village. That night, the villagers of Banana Leaf Village didn't sleep well. No one knew what the future of Banana Leaf Village would be if they could no longer sell the hemostatic flowers. Early the next morning, Yun Sheng went to Banana Leaf Village's Dharma Temple and told Great Magician Yang everything that had happened the day before. To make the medicine, Yun Sheng's simple and crude tools were clearly not enough. The Dharma Temple had the largest variety of herbs in the village. It also had the most suitable tools for making medicine and hygiene. Grandpa Village Chief had also informed Great Magus Yang in advance. Great Magus Yang didn't have much interest in Yun Sheng, saying that she wanted to make a hemostatic medicine. He was a magus. Even if he wanted to refine something, he would mainly use magic medicine. In his eyes, ancient medicine was just some inferior medicine to treat headaches and fevers. Great Magician Yang wouldn't interfere with the village's affairs. The Dharma Temple never interfered with politics or international affairs. With Yun Sheng's guarantee that she wouldn't delay the Dharma Temple's affairs, Great Magician Yang agreed that Yun Sheng could use the pharmacy for 2 hours at night. However, the herbs she used had to be deducted from her monthly salary. Yunshang didn't have any objections to this. That night, after finishing her chores, Yunshang walked into the pharmacy wearing her herbalist uniform. As night fell, the bright pine oil lamps in the Dharma temple illuminated the pharmacy. Yunshang picked more than 10 fresh hemostatic flowers. Recalling the smell of the hemostatic agent she had smelled in the herb shop yesterday, she opened the drawers of the pharmacy. The raw material is hemostatic flower. Other than that, there are also red currant flower, flower, and arcane stone. There seems to be something missing. Yunshang quickly found the smell of the different herbs in the hemostatic agent, based on her memory. Yunshang, who was born in the Shenong family, grew up in a pot of herbs. Her tongue and nose were only slightly inferior to her eyes, which had been trained in the Shenong eye. As long as she smelled the herbs, even if she didn't recognize the name, she would be able to identify them clearly the next time she smelled them. However, after grinding the corresponding herbs, she realized that the medicine seemed to be missing something. However, she couldn't remember what it was exactly. The wick of the pine oil lamp was swollen from the suction. For hours quickly passed. Yunshang still couldn't find the last herb. The agreed time with Great Magician Yang had arrived. Yunshang could only extinguish the oil lamp and walk out of the Dharma temple. When she walked out of the Dharma temple, a small black shadow scurried in front of her. Yunshang didn't even frown. Xiaohei took a big stride and scurried in front of Yunshang. Although it was already a part of the Yun family, Xiaohei seemed to be a little afraid of Yunshang. When Yunshang wasn't around, it would spend most of its time outside. When Yunshang was about to return, it would pick her up at the entrance of the Dharma temple. One dog and one person, 2 hazy shadows, big and small, walked between the fields of Banana Leaf Village. Xiaohei was running happily at the side with the sounds of insects. Suddenly, a field mouse jumped out from the field ridge. Xiaohei didn't say anything and pounced on it. This pounce caused the night dew on the field ridge to splash all over Yunshang's ankle. The fresh and moist smell of the dew assaulted her nose. Yunshang was stimulated by the cold dew and thought of something. She finally knew what her hemostatic medicine was missing. Chapter 26. In the dark night, Yunshang's eyes flashed with excitement and joy. Xiaohei's unintentional action gave her a burst of inspiration. She remembered the last ingredient she lacked for the hemostatic agent. She was pleasantly surprised. She picked up Xiaohei and ran towards the Dharma temple instead of going home. The Dharma temple sometimes had patients who needed treatment at night, so the doors of the Dharma temple were always open at night. Hour later, Great Magus Yang should be asleep. Yunshang returned to the pharmacy and turned the pine oil lamp to its dimmest setting. She took out the hemostatic agent paste that she had ground earlier and carefully added the dew that she had collected from the herb field into the paste. The Boundless World's herb system advocated the power of nature. A drop of water or a leaf could sometimes have unexpected effects. After the dew was added into the paste, the hemostatic agent's color changed slightly. The smell it emitted was almost exactly the same as what Yunshang had seen in the pharmacy earlier. It's done. Yunshang lowered her voice. However, she immediately realized a problem. The hemostatic agent was a success, but who should she find to test it on? According to Yunshang's medical knowledge, a new drug had to go through clinical trials before it could be used on humans. In the village, only hunters hunting in the mountains could use hemostatic agents. However, the price of hemostatic agents was too high. Most hunters couldn't bear to use hemostatic agents. They would only find the sorcerers in the Dharma temple to treat it for free. Otherwise, they would use the traditional method of applying hemostatic flowers. As a result, no one in Banana Leaf Village had seen the true effect of hemostatic flowers. Therefore, no one knew if the hemostatic agent that Yunshang used was a successful one. Should I go to town and find a warrior to test it on? Yunshang was in a dilemma. Just as she was in a dilemma, the sound of a heavy object falling to the ground could be heard from the courtyard. Could it be that someone really came to treat her at this time? Yunshang had sneaked into the Dharma temple. If she was discovered by the eccentric Great Magus Yang, it would be terrible. Yunshang quickly blew out the pine oil lamp, held her breath and tiptoed to the door. The courtyard had regained its tranquility. Xiaohei, who was in Yunshang's arms, suddenly barked outside. Yunshang covered her nose and mouth. Keep a low profile. We are thieves, Yunshang said angrily. Xiao Hei howled as if she had been wronged. Then she let out 2 more low cries. At this time, Yunshang also smelled a faintly discernible scent. The smell was very special, as if it was mixed with the smell of blood. Poison. Yunshang became alert. Someone had been poisoned. She opened the half-closed door and found a black shadow crawling on the ground in the courtyard. Yi Baiming. Yunshang recognized the motionless person in the dark at a glance. It was Yi Baiming, whom she had not seen for many days. Yunshang quickly went forward and tried to flip Yi Baiming over. She was just about to go forward when a biting cold sword light flashed past. Yi Baiming arched his body. His left hand was pressed against his abdomen. Black blood kept flowing out from his fingertips. He was holding a sword in his hand. He was very alert. Even though he was unconscious, his body was still on guard. If anyone came near, he would instinctively attack. Yi, you're scaring me. You're scaring me to death. Yunshang lowered her voice and scolded him fiercely. When he heard Yunshang's flustered and exasperated voice, Yi Baiming's body shook violently. The sword in his hand drooped down and the corners of his mouth curled into a smile. Little wild cat, it's you. As soon as he finished speaking, he could no longer support himself and fell to the ground. He was seriously injured. His clothes were completely covered in blood. Yunshang did not know what kind of willpower he had relied on to make it to the temple. Considering that the pharmacy was not very well hidden, Yunshang joined forces with Xiao Hei to drag him back to Yi Baiming's room. Yi Baiming's room was very simple and crude. Aside from a few books, there was only a bed and a table with a kettle on it. Yunshang lit the oil lamp and took out all the medical tools she had on her. Under the light, Yi Baiming's face was filled with a poisonous color. His lips had turned black. The most serious injury on his body was at his waist. Looking at the condition of the wound, he must have been attacked by some kind of highly poisonous magical beast. Didn't he say that he was going to train? From the looks of it, he was going to risk his life. Yunshang cursed under her breath. She took out a scalpel and cut open his blood-stained clothes. Yi Baiming was in pain, but he did not make a sound. You're so stubborn. Let's see how long you can take it. Yunshang glanced at the wound. She decided to first scrape off the rotten flesh on the wound before extracting the poison. She had a wicked thought. Why don't I give this guy an anesthetic? He deserves to die from the pain. She was just thinking about it. Excessive pain could sometimes lead to undesirable consequences. Yunshang took out her acupuncture needles that had been purified with devil's snare juice and inserted them into several important acupoints on Yi Baiming's abdomen. The anesthetic quickly took effect. Not only could it stop the pain, it could also help to slow down the bleeding. Yunshang took out a scalpel and quickly cut off the dead flesh on Yi Baiming's wound. After removing most of the rotten flesh, fresh flesh was finally exposed on Yi Baiming's wound. Next is to remove the poisonous blood. Yunshang bent over and sucked the poisonous blood from Yi Baiming's body. As long as the poisonous blood was removed, he would be almost healed. She had just sucked in a breath when she felt a chill on her neck. She looked up and saw that Yi Baiming had already woken up. His complexion was much better than before. Just now, he felt a numbing itch in his severely injured abdomen. An indescribable strange feeling surged up. He felt that his eyelids were very heavy, and it took a lot of effort. There was a faint fragrance below him. He quickly realized that Yunshang was lying on top of him. Yi Baiming was a few years older than Yunshang. Due to his upbringing, he knew more about the matters between men and women than the average person. Just then Yunshang lifted her head. Although he couldn't see Yunshang's face, Yi Baiming had already pictured this scene in his mind. Do you want to die? There's poison in your wound. Yi Baiming didn't know what to do for a moment. TSK, he really had a demon-level physique. The devil's snare anesthetic that could paralyze a cow only lasted for a few minutes on him. Yunshang cursed under her breath. She said unhappily, "The poison is transmitted through blood. You won't die." After saying this, she bent over and sucked a few more mouthfuls of poisonous blood from Yi Baiming. Blood transmission? What was that? Yi Baiming was stunned. He didn't understand what Yunshang was talking about. After sucking all the blood, Yunshang took out a newly developed hemostatic agent, and poured half of it on Yi Baiming's body. Alright, for the next few days avoid water, avoid spicy food, avoid meat and fish. You can't use force. Calm down, and cook some anti-inflammatory herbs. Yunsheng yawned. Looking outside, it was already past the third watch. If she still didn't return, she was afraid that Yun Songhai would come out to look for her. Yi Baiming lowered his head and looked at the almost perfect bandages on his body. His expression was strange. Just as he was about to ask, his expression suddenly changed. He stretched out his arm and pulled Yunsheng's body onto the bed. He lifted the quilt and pressed her under his body. Chapter 27. Pervert. Yunsheng once again ignored the fact that she was only 6 years old. In the next moment, she understood the reason behind Yi Baiming's actions. The sound of the door being pushed open could be heard. Only great magician Yang could walk freely in the temple in the middle of the night. He must have seen the light in Yi Baiming's room. In the middle of the night, a skinny middle-aged man barged into a little boy's room? Did the old gray wolf meet an injured, proud little fox? Yunsheng's mind was filled with fantasies. She didn't realize that she, a 6-year-old lowly, was hiding in a 10-year-old boy's bed in the middle of the night. Yi Baiming's bed wasn't big. It was already very cramped to accommodate 2 people. Yi Baiming had just finished treating his injuries, and his upper body had already been stripped naked by Yunsheng. While Yunsheng was letting her imagination run wild, she moved slightly, carefully avoiding Yi Baiming's smooth abdominal muscles. When she was sucking the blood, she realized that although Yi Baiming looked slender and handsome, his muscles were very firm. He didn't look like a 10-year-old boy at all. Injured? Demon beast? Great magician Yang looked at the bloody clothes that Yi Baiming had thrown on the ground. Yi Baiming had already gone to Yu Wu mountain range many times. Every time he had entered and exited safely. He had never been in such a sorry state like tonight. Yi Baiming turned his body sideways and tucked the blanket down naturally, covering Yunsheng's restless eyes. He pretended to lie on the bed and said casually, I had a conflict with a few hunters. There were summoners and beasts among them. Hunters were professional people in the boundless continent who specialized in all kinds of assassination, hunting, and other kinds of missions. They were mostly made up of a few types of people. Warriors above great martial masters, great magicians, and even summoners. Most of them belonged to different hunting groups. Most of them were martial grandmasters and above. Their skills were extraordinary. For the sake of money, they would do anything. They were a group that made people apprehensive on the continent. It was already a miracle that Yi Baiming could escape with serious injuries under the siege of several adult hunters. The poisonous wound on his abdomen seemed to be caused by the hunter-summoner's beast. Has the wound been treated? Great Magus Yang's tone was cold, without a trace of warmth. The interaction between the two of them didn't seem like the interaction between master and disciple, but more like Yunsheng pondered, unable to discern the relationship between Yi Baiming and great magician Yang. I applied some hemostatic flowers. Yi Baiming frowned slightly. The little wild cat under him moved restlessly. He could feel her delicate nose rubbing against his chest. Noticing that something was wrong with Yi Baiming, great magician Yang took a step forward and said, Let me take a look. Seeing that he was about to remove the blanket first, Yunsheng, who was hiding under the blanket, felt her heart almost jump out of her throat. You were the one who sent them? Yi Baiming suddenly tensed up and pushed great magician Yang away with one hand. Yunsheng wasn't on guard and the bridge of her nose bumped into his wound. The wound that had just stopped bleeding burst open again. Warm blood flowed down Yunsheng's cheek. A hand quickly reached under the blanket and quickly wrote a few words on Yunsheng's back. Don't make a sound. After great magician Yang heard these words, his hand that was about to test Yi Baiming paused. He laughed dryly. How is that possible? You're my disciple. What good would it do me to hurt you? Perhaps you didn't want them to kill me. You just wanted to test me and see how strong I really am. Don't worry, I promise to give you my magic soul as long as you can heal my eyes. Yi Baiming's blood had already soaked the blanket. Yunsheng could smell the thick scent of blood. Magic soul? Eyes? Yunsheng's eyes suddenly widened. Their conversation was very strange. Why was she so confused when she heard it? She couldn't understand what they were talking about even after a long time. That's right. That was our agreement. As long as I heal your eyes, you will give me your magic soul. Your unparalleled magic soul. 5 years have passed, and there's only one step left in my magic array. As long as you can find a 200-year-old magical beast soul stone, I'll be able to heal your eyes. Great Magus Yang couldn't help becoming excited. His eyes filled with excitement. I will abide by our agreement. Find a 200-year-old magic beast soul stone and immediately get out of my room. Yi Baiming already felt a wave of dizziness. He clenched his teeth and held on to his last breath of Do Qi. He knew that Great Magus Yang was an incomparably cruel person. If he couldn't hold on and collapsed, Yun Shang, who was hiding under the blankets and had eavesdropped on Great Magus Yang's shocking secret, would definitely die. Then you rest well. I'll wait for your soul stone. Great Magician Yang smiled. He was already used to Yi Baiming's impudence. Geniuses were often arrogant and unruly. Yi Baiming was a genius, but he couldn't escape from the palm of his hand. Under the blanket, Yun Shang was startled by the conversation between the two. Using his magic soul in exchange for his eyesight? It wasn't until Great Magician Yang left the room that Yi Baiming finally couldn't take it anymore and fainted for the second time. This time he didn't wake up until the latter half of the night. His first reaction when he woke up was to touch his pillow out of habit. There was always a sword beside his pillow. His movements were too big and pulled at his wound. He couldn't help but groan. If you don't want to live, then move again and drink this bowl of brown sugar water. Yun Shang opened her large eyes and removed the wet cloth from Yi Baiming's forehead. After Great Magician Yang left, Yi Baiming's physical strength couldn't take it anymore, and he lost too much blood. He had a high fever that didn't subside. Luckily, Yun Shang helped him with heat dissipation treatment in time. Otherwise, even if he didn't die, his brain would have been damaged. What the hell is that? I don't eat sweets. Yi Baiming smelled a trace of sweetness and turned his head away in disgust. But in the next moment, his tall nose was pinched by a pair of soft little hands and the hard edge of the bowl hit his teeth. Yun Shang forcefully pinched Yi Baiming's nose and forced the large bowl of brown sugar water into his mouth. Little wild cat, you dare to force medicine into my mouth? You know who I am. Yi Baiming was like an angry wolf cub. He grabbed Yun Shang's collar and acted like he was about to explode. I'm saving your life. I don't care what kind of dirty business you have with Great Magician Yang. Under my Yun Shang's there has never been a patient that I can't save. If you want to have a chance to see your mother again, you'll have to eat whatever I feed you for the next few days. Yun Shang wasn't flustered. Her words were clear and pleasant to the ear. As soon as she finished speaking, Yi Baiming's hand froze. He mumbled, "How do you know about my mother?" You were talking nonsense when you had a high fever. You called out for your mother for several hours and didn't let go of my hand. You're better than me. My mother died a long time ago. Yun Shang curled her lips and said carelessly. There was a moment of silence in the room. Yi Baiming's handsome face had a suspicious expression. He softly said, "I'm sorry. Don't worry. Everything you said last night was nonsense. What I heard was also nonsense. I won't say a single word." Yun Shang understood that knowing too much would shorten one's life. She checked Yi Baiming's wound. After confirming that it had healed, she took advantage of the fact that the sky was still dark to quietly sneak back home. After Yun Shang left, Yi Baiming sat on the bed as if in meditation. He took out an exquisite ring from his body. It was a storage ring. There were several soul stones stored in the ring. One of them was a 200-year-old magical beast soul stone. You're tuning into the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.